Good evening and welcome to the South Lyon Community Schools Board of Education virtual regular meeting of February 2nd, 2021. I will call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Ms. Ertel, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Ms. McDowell.
Here.
I'm here. Mr. Dashner.
I am here.
Mr. Leftwich.
I am here.
Mr. Schweigler.
Here.
Mr. Abate.
Here.
And Mr. Kennedy.
I am here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. Now please join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, that will bring us to our first session of public comments. Just a reminder for anybody that had planned to call in, if you can keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. If you do exceed 3 minutes, you will automatically be cut off. And please remember, it is *6 to unmute. And we do have quite a few comments tonight. Our first public comment is from Mark, and please excuse me if I get these names wrong. It's Skrelja, I believe, wanting to call in about the Great Lakes Bombers.
Hello, board members.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, board members. Go ahead. My name is Mark Scarelli, and I'm one of the board members for the Great Lakes Bombers baseball organization. And I just wanted to call in to give a little information to you guys about answer, I guess, one of your main questions from the January 19th meeting. And that was the field usage. Worried about overusage on the fields with adding another organization. And
Sir?
The same kids, hello?
Sir, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if you have a microphone going for the meeting, the feedback is hard to hear you. If you could mute that. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I apologize. So basically what I was saying was that one of your main concerns, it seemed like, on the January 19th meeting was that the overusage of the fields if another organization was approved. And kind of my rebuttal to that would be is it's the same South Lyon kids that would be using the fields if they were playing in the South Lyon Junior League. We're not bringing kids in from all across Michigan and adding more numbers. So I don't think that usage of the fields or overusage of the fields would be an issue, considering that these are all South Lyon kids. And pretty much if the same group of kids was in the Junior League, the fields would be able to support them without a problem. Hello?
Yes, is that it? Okay, thank you very much. Our next public comment is from Heather Fox. She states the Great Lakes Bombers Facility Use Group clarification request. I have 2 boys that currently play for Great Lakes Bombers organization. My older son left South Lyon Junior League before the Bombers organization started, and we were thrilled that this organization started up and came back to a South Lyon team. We live in South Lyon, pay South Lyon taxes, and both of my boys will be going to South Lyon High School. It would be great to have fields that are local for this organization to use. Next, we have Nathan Westover. He's writing in about Great Lakes Bombers as well. As a local nonprofit organization, the Bombers teams are made up of local kids that fill our schools' halls. The organization gives more opportunities for local youth to engage in baseball. As local taxpayers, the participants in this organization should have access to the school fields. Please do the right thing and allow our kids to the access they deserve. Thank you for your time. Next, we have Deanna Pauley writing in about the Great Lakes Bombers, requesting permission to use South Lyon baseball fields. Next, we have Robin Oliver writing in about Bombers baseball. Comment is open the fields. Eric has, I believe that is, as a South Lyon family that has participated in the local athletic programs for the past 9 years, we urge approval for the Great Lakes Bombers to be able to utilize their 3A status on athletic fields in South Lyon. Our team is made up of 100% South Lyon families, and we represent the community with utmost class and respect at every gathering. Allowing the use of community fields that we fund through the taxes will keep us here and spending our money locally. Thank you. Next, we have Caitlin Westover writing about the Great Lakes Bombers organization. I'm a mother to a 12-year-old baseball-loving boy on the 12U Bombers baseball team. A lot of these boys have played baseball on the same team since they were 8 years old. Baseball is life for them. It is where they go to feel peace and success. My husband and I are taxpayers in South Lyon, and we are asking that this organization be approved to use the fields within the South Lyon School District. These boys will continue to play baseball through high school together. Help them stay together. Next, we have Kevin Richards. Hello. He's also writing about the Great Lakes Bombers. Hello, my son Andrew is a player on the 8U Great Lakes Bombers baseball team. Our entire program is up for consideration to obtain Group 3A status, allowing our program to use the district's fields and facilities. The vast majority of our team is from South Lyon. Many of us have lived here for 10 plus years. As taxpayers for this city, and with children who attend our district schools through high school, we kindly ask you approve our program's request. Thank you. Next, we have Michelle O'Donnell. She writes, I am thrilled that there is a proposed plan to get secondary students back into the classroom, but I'm very curious as to the plan for those kids that have to quarantine. I know teachers can't be expected to still teach virtually while we are in person almost full time, but I'm hoping they can at least record their lectures so the students who have to be home don't fall behind. No instruction for up to 10 days would be devastating to most high school students, especially those in AP classes. Next, we have Erica Grochowski. She's writing about the Great Lake Bombers, and the comment was left empty and said no, she wasn't calling in. Next, we have somebody that's calling in, Caden Sleek, who is representing students calling about in-person learning. Mr. Sleek, if you are on, it's *6 to unmute. Okay, Mr. Sleek, are you there? Okay, we'll go back to him. The next one is a call-in as well, and it's
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm here speaking about going in person 100%. I believe that going in person 100% is an awful idea. I mean, what are the benefits? We've already gotten used to virtual, and cramming more than 30 students into a small room in a pandemic isn't a very good idea, where it's only getting worse. On top of it all, we would only be about 1 foot apart in a classroom, far from the 6 feet we have to be apart, even with masks on. In conclusion, going in person feels like we would only be hurting ourselves in the end.
Thank you, Mr. Sleek. Our next comment is a call-in as well. This is Carter Sleek, who's calling about in-person education. Carter, if you're on, it's *6 to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a student at South Lyon East High School, and I would like to talk about my dismay with the 100% in-person notation. It is a rather bad idea in almost every aspect and has few, if any, upsides. The notion appeases only a portion of the students currently at East. With the 50% plan, it appeases all groups to an extent. those that want to go in person, those who like online, and those who prefer a mix between the two. Well, the 100% plan completely disregards two of the three groups. People like myself who prefer online at this time but don't want to take virtual courses are completely disregarded. While virtual classes provide, it isn't guaranteed to be South Lyon teachers, so for certain classes, the curriculums may be completely different. You are only appeasing those with the loudest voice, but they do not speak for all of us. Another point in this argument is why we're taking online to begin with, COVID. The state of Michigan is under uncontrolled spread, and sending people back in person is sending them into harm's way. I've seen many students not care about mask guidelines with it below their nose and sometimes even showing their mouth. It's like having a water bottle with a gaping hole in its side, which renders it completely useless. If you're going to send back in person, you must tighten restrictions. If a person continues to wear their mask in that way, they should be punished. They are putting others and themselves at risk. If someone in our school dies from COVID, are you prepared to have their death on your hands? I hope you sincerely think this over.
Thank you, Mr. Sleek. Up next, we have Kelly Darty. She states secondary students need to return to class 5 days a week. Virtual learning is not good enough academically or mentally. It has been too long, and it is safe for their return. Mental health has been ignored for too long. Our next comment is Michelle Youngblood. She writes, please consider secondary going back 4 full days like elementary. I've been silent all year, but my middle schooler is suffering from all angles. Next, we have Lindsay Adkins. She writes, I would like to see secondary schools resume 4 full days a week in person. Let these kids get back. Isolation is hurting our kids. Next, we have David Girardeau. He is going to be calling in. David, if you're there, it's *6 to unmute. Okay, while we're waiting for David, I'm going to go to the next comment, which is Jessica Garnick. She writes, is there a plan for learning for students who have to quarantine due to an exposure or positive COVID test? Currently, there is not a plan for the elementary schools. Every day, we are receiving notices of positive COVID cases at all of the schools. The loss of learning at the secondary level will make it difficult for the students to keep up if there isn't an option for lessons to be accessed virtually. I support in-person learning as long as there is a plan in place. Mr. Girardeau, are you on yet? Okay, continuing on. Next, we have Rebecca Pennell. She writes, for anyone that doesn't agree with kids going back to 4 days in person, there is an option to do all virtual. Take advantage of that. As for me, I fully support the 4-day in person. Up next, we have Kimberly Lindstrom. She writes, this is not about what parents or the board wants. This should not be political or selfish. This should be 100% about our children. I think throughout this entire mess, which was difficult for all to navigate, our children are the ones who got lost in the shuffle. Science and data support the fact that our children should be in school full time. Our government and health departments also now support the fact that our children should be in school full time. It's time to put our children first. Our next comment is from Amy Schuyler. She writes, thank you to the board, super, teachers, and staff for their hard work during the most challenging of times, a global pandemic. My 6th and 9th grader have worked hard during hybrid schooling. It hasn't always been easy, but I have noticed new skills, work habits, and perseverance during these strange times. This school year was never going to be normal, not in September, not in January, and not even in March. I appreciate the countless hours teachers have put into learning new ways to teach kids virtually. Our next comment is from Don Barwig. He writes, there are many families that left the district in 2020 that are watching how you handle return to school for secondary students before deciding what to do next year. For many of us, this is the last chance for the board to do the right thing and get all the children back in person full time. Should the board not do the right thing and get all children back in person, we will choose to remain in private school in 2021, 2022. Do the right thing. You owe the people that live in this community. Next, we have Tracy Kacharian. She writes questions regarding the plan for middle school, high schools. 1, considering the new virus strains and low immunizations, what data was used to determine that February is an appropriate timeline to transition to 4 days a week without the ability to social distance? 2, what additional safety procedures and/or PPE will be implemented to help prevent outbreaks, especially during lunch when students remove masks? And number 3, beginning in March, will hybrid students still have the option to attend classes remotely? Next, we have Laura Pennycuff. She writes, please consider allowing the in-person high school and middle school students an option of attending virtually past the March 1st date that has been proposed for safety of staff and students. This will allow students that are quarantined to have access to the curriculum, as well as students who don't feel comfortable to attend in person. I fear that many parents will send their children sick, so they don't miss school if no virtual option is available. The vaccine is also in scarce supply. We'll go back. Is Mr. Girardeau available yet? Up next, we will have Heidi Herrera, and she was going to call in as well. And then following her, Morgan Kovalak, who was going to call in.
Hello?
Yes, is this Heidi?
No.
Okay, who is this?
Morgan?
Morgan, okay, go ahead.
I'm a sophomore at South Lyon High School, and I completely understand the desperation to be able to teach in person. We should keep in mind that COVID is currently mutating, though. There are currently 3 new strains, one of which is more contagious. Our focus at this time is student and teacher safety, not education. It's predicted that the new strain will hit us in just about 6 weeks. March 1st is 4 weeks away. I propose that we keep this year optional for in-person. This pleases both sides of my argument, as students can go in person or stay home. Mental health is blatantly ignored. Going in person will bring new anxieties to students. We just got used to online. It's unfair to keep switching up. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Is Heidi on? Okay, we'll skip to the next comment. The next one is from Pam Nielsen. She writes, these kids need to be back in school 100%. At the beginning of the year, it was a lot of tears and frustration from the kids in class. Now most of them are disinterested. The teachers are trying, but it's hard when the kids have checked out. We must get these kids back in the classroom. This board and administration have done a huge disservice to the kids. Thanks to this board and the administration, the option of in-person was never offered. Act now to return them to 100% in person. Next, we have Tori Schoeck. I want my kids in school full-time immediately. Robbing these kids of a quality education because of a virus that has little to no impact on their demographic is criminal. How can you explain not having near full-time face-to-face learning while neighboring districts conduct 4-day face-to-face without incident? If you're afraid of your child bringing the virus home, then you should take precautions. Another parent said it best, my kids are rotting away in their rooms. I agree 100%. Up next, we have Jason Demink. He states science and data support children back in school full time. At the last meeting, Superintendent Archibald said that they are going to have a shell of a plan for returning secondary children to school. Quite frankly, it's preposterous. The plan should have been in place in August for children to return to school. It shouldn't take 6 months to formulate a plan. Put our kids back in school. Next, we have Christine Sakuro. She said she represents her daughter and did not leave a comment. Next, we have Michelle Feltz. I'm sorry. Live streaming. The plan listed did not address the live streaming. My hope is that this does not go away when the students are back for full days. If there is a question about whether a child may have been exposed to COVID-19, it's easy to have them stay home, get the proper tests, quarantine if needed, and still not miss much schooling. If the live streaming is an option and assignments are posted in Google Classroom, I believe this sets up as best as possible to fight this. Our next comment is from Christine Cumberland. She's writing in about the Bombers. Please kindly consider letting the Bombers use South Lyon fields. We have lived here for the past 20 years and have 3 children in the school systems. The Bombers organization is a South Lyon-based travel ball organization that has the coaching, pitching certifications, and skill set to develop my kids. Please do not penalize our children who live in South Lyon and not let them utilize the school's fields that are in our own community. Thank you. Next, we have Chris Campo. She writes, I share the excitement of this community, knowing you're considering getting these kids back to school for 4 days. In August, we were given a choice of face-to-face or virtual. Families made the choice that fit best for their kids. With threats of walkouts or other strong arming, no one went back face-to-face. School is essential, and we need to get in-person learning. We all know firsthand that virtual learning is not a good fit for the majority. Please vote to approve the plan as outlined in the agenda. Next, we have Chris Campo again. That looks like a duplicate. After that, we have Scott Cumberland. South Lyon produces some very high-level athletes. The Great Lakes Bombers organization provides the type of instruction and coaching these athletes need and in their own hometown. This organization will enrich the community and put much-needed dollars back into the local economy instead of elsewhere when they leave because the current system does not provide what they need. The organization is South Lyon based with our rosters at 90% residency. Access to fields which should be granted based on 3A qualification. Up next, we have Amy Taylor. She writes, I just want to emphasize how important it is to allow the kids of South Lyon from all organizations to play baseball, softball. It's been shown to be an activity that can remain safe from COVID spread, and it is critically important to get the kids outside active and interacting with other kids for both their physical and mental health. There is no reason to prevent any kids from playing baseball, softball any longer. Thanks. Next looks like a duplicate again from Scott Cumberland. The next one we have is Jen Adams. As educators, it is not only math and science you teach the students how to handle life's difficult situations. The current model is be afraid, avoid, be the victim. Where is that in the South Lyon Community School mission statement? The South Lyon Community Schools is to provide the highest quality educational process so that all students can excel as individuals and become contributing members of the society. Be leaders, rise up, let them go back face-to-face 5 days a week. Mr. Rattel or Mr. Abate, would one of you like to take over on comment 39?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Okay, this one is from Amy Marie. Will there be any planned virtual period district-wide for kids the week after midwinter break, similar to the week after Christmas break, in case of families are participating in activities that may result in potential for increased exposure over midwinter break? Next, we have Amy Goodridge. Based on the latest studies regarding the COVID positive cases in our country, it makes logical sense to bring the kids back to face-to-face learning. We can take examples from Novi, Brighton, and Northville, who have all been in school since the beginning of the pandemic. Crystal Nowaka. The importance of classifying the Great Lakes Bombers team as a Group 3A. Please review the addresses of each player. It will provide information regarding the residency of our team. Majority, if not all, are South Lyon, New Hudson residents and taxpayers. This group's hometown is South Lyon. The players attend South Lyon schools. It's common sense that a team representing South Lyon should have equal access to the community's facilities and public places, including school grounds and parks. Lisa Grochowski. Listen to the science and allow those that want to be back in classroom. I am a registered nurse and have not missed one day of work because I am essential. We have protocols in place that keep us safe. None of my coworkers have tested positive or died. Other districts and entire states have been able to keep kids in their classrooms. Our kids are suffering because we don't have a plan in South Lyon. Please vote yes to return face-to-face. Angie Roush, all staff must be vaccinated. It is common now for schools in a district to have open classrooms daily due to the lack of guest teachers. Students at least have some in-person learning. If the board decides to bring the district back to 100% without vaccinating all staff, students will face more interruptions in learning than they currently do. I urge you to not change the current plan until the district vaccinates all staff members. Allison Ritter, I support in-person education. Health experts say it is safe with precautions in place. We have those precautions in buildings and buses. It's time to get on with educating. Vaccination of employees may ease staff fears. Reach out to the health department for a plan to fast-track teachers, bus drivers, etc. Not just support on paper, but the county's help in carrying out a vaccine plan. Kids have suffered long enough. It's time to get back in the classroom. The next one is Morgan Leckrone, and she says she's going to call in. Morgan, if you're on the line, *6 to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I am a junior at South Lyon East. I am concerned about the plan to return to 100% in-person learning for secondary students. The average class size at East is about 30 students. This means students end up sitting in a full classroom with a maximum of 2 to 3 feet distance between them, less than half of the recommended 6 feet of social distance. There is simply no way that social distancing can be maintained in a classroom when secondary schools are at full capacity. This is also a problem in the cafeteria when students do not wear masks. Currently, 4 students sit at a table with approximately 6 feet of distance between them. If schools resume 100% capacity, what is the plan to maintain social distancing at lunch? Another concern is school buses. When students share a seat on the bus, there is no space between them. What is the plan for distancing on school buses with 100% in person? Another problem, the lack of remote learning for students in quarantine. If a student is exposed to or has COVID-19, they must quarantine. We need to have remote learning available for these students to keep up with their classes, as missing school will make students extremely behind. Having no option for remote learning could also encourage students to attend school when they are feeling sick because they do not want to miss school. How will students who are at home keep up with their classes? I understand that some students have a hard time working at home and would prefer to come into school every day. If you allow students to come in 4 days a week while still offering remote learning, they can choose this if it is important to them. This is a win-win situation for students and social distancing because some students will continue with the 50% in person while others can choose to come in 4 days a week. So there will be more social distance at school. Thank you for your time and consideration of these concerns.
Thank you. Next is from Kristen Campbell. Our children's mental health matters. They need in-person school and to be around their friends and to actually learn something. It's downright sad that nobody is taking into consideration our kids' mental health. Get our kids back to school. Let us be heard. This isn't fair. Lisa McPhee. Please allow the students to go back to school full time. Let's give this a chance. Brighton and other communities have been going back since September and have not had an increase in cases. We can take the proper precautions and go to school. It is time. Jennifer Downs. I fully support the new plan that allows our secondary students to return to school 4 days a week. This step forward not only provides increased in-person instructional time, but it's also a step towards a greater sense of normalcy for our kids. If students have to quarantine due to possible exposure or illness, I think they should still be able to attend classes remotely via live stream and Google Classroom. Students shouldn't be marked absent and have to play catch up for following quarantine protocols.
Ms. Sertel, this next one, number 49, looks like a duplicate from earlier.
Okay, thank you. David Grochowski. Many district parents support the secondary schools returning to school full-time. Infection data backs this up, and the surrounding districts have proved it can be done safely. If district leadership chooses to continue the remote learning option that defies public opinion and science, and instead chooses to further delay the full-time learning option that experts agree is the best method for our kids, we need to be told why. Please do what's best for the students and get them back in school. Next comment is Anne Ramonelli. Thank you, Superintendent Archibald, for submitting a proposal that supports face-to-face learning. It follows the science, has the support of the governor, and will support the educational, mental, and social well-being of our children. I'm appealing to the board to be the voice of the children who wish to be face-to-face and the parents who accept the responsibility that goes along with it. The next one is Jennifer Gomorry, and she is going to call in. So Ms. Gomorry, if you're on the line, *6 to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, great. The CDC states in-person learning can be safe if done with 6-foot social distance and other established COVID protocols. The CDC website states, quote, "A mask is not a substitute for social distancing. Masks should still be worn in addition to staying 6 feet apart, especially when indoors around people who don't live in your household," quote. This 3-foot proposal would push South Lyon Secondary from some risk to the higher risk category under CDC operating schools guidelines. Governor Whitmer said all schools should offer some form of in-person learning by March 1st with proper protocols. South Lyon is already doing this. State of Michigan guidelines for operating schools safely state, quote, "Maintain 6 feet of distance at all times. If physical distancing of 6 feet cannot be maintained, schools should consider alternative strategies such as a hybrid schedule. Even with this 3-foot minimal plan, schools must ensure that when students are eating at lunch with masks off, they maintain 6 feet of physical distance to the extent feasible. What is your plan to social distance in the lunchroom? 100% in person would greatly reduce safety, especially with South Lyon COVID cases on the rise since school reopened this year. At 3 feet, students seated near a COVID positive classmate are simply exposed by attending class. Over 500 school employees have died of COVID nationwide in 2020. Teachers are in the high-risk group for vaccinations, which the state health department said may take months to administer. The governor and president have called for increased funding for safer schools. President Biden's plan would reduce class sizes, reconfigure classrooms for social distancing, improve ventilation, provide more personal protective equipment, and increase transportation capacity to social distance on buses. In a January 27th press release from Governor Whitmer's office about her funding plan, quote, "It is also crucial we pass a plan that helps vaccinate our educators and put more dollars into classrooms so we can get our kids back in school safely while staying focused on protecting public health. The highly contagious COVID variant B117 is in Wayne and Washtenaw counties. U of M Ann Arbor put students living on and near campus in lockdown and halted sports to protect students. School districts must balance instructional continuity, student social emotional needs, and health and safety. The hybrid plan accomplishes all three. 100% in person now only meets one. 3-foot social distancing in schools is not recommended by the CDC nor the state. In fact, Oakland County Health Department requires students and staff be quarantined if less than 6 feet from a COVID positive individual for more than 15 minutes. Under this proposed plan, how will students that are quarantined for 10 days keep up with their classes? Thank you for all you've done to keep our students safe. Please continue to do so. The pandemic is not over. Thanks again.
Thank you. Next comment is from Gino Ramonelli. A point of clarification from the January 11 meeting at minute mark 31:45, a statement was made that many families choose the hybrid option. My family did not vote for the hybrid learning model. We settled for it. It was Plan B, option 2, and not our first choice. Please do not make the mistake of referring to the hybrid plan as our choice and rewrite history. Next comment is from Julianne Sleek, and she is going to call in. Ms. Sleek, if you're on the line, *6 to unmute.
This is Julianne. Can you hear me?
Yep, go right ahead.
I am a parent of 2 secondary children in South Lyon. As a school district, it's your job to educate our children. As a parent, it's our job to parent our children. This cry in the media that the district has not been educating our children is ridiculous. The difference is that it takes effort as parents to make this work. Many parents don't want to take on that responsibility. They want the school district to educate and raise their children. I've learned a lot over this last year about how selfish people are. My kids are not sitting in their bedrooms not learning right now. And if they were, that's on me as a parent. It's my job to make sure they're doing their schooling, and it's my job as a parent to be in charge of ensuring their mental and physical well-being and health is taken care of. Yes, some teachers may get vaccinated by March, but our children won't be vaccinated. Is it really worth risking their lives or your family's lives? If you say yes, then you obviously haven't been touched by this virus. Over 450,000 deaths in 1 year. How can this risk be justified? The change that's going to happen at 100% capacity is that there will be butts in seats at the secondary schools. Close to 8,000 individuals in the district will be put at risk unnecessarily. What's that teaching our staff and students? I'll tell you exactly what that's teaching them. It's how selfish our administration and parents are. I want nothing more than my children to be in school right now, more than anything. I want the world to be normal for myself and my children. But in 1 year, there have been over 226 million cases of COVID-19 in our country. Simply put, we can't put our kids, families, and teachers in harm's way, period. The vaccine is here. Everyone needs to take a moment, take a breath, and step back. Allow those that want to get vaccinated, and then we can talk about everyone going back to school. As a family, we chose not to select virtual learning. We felt that the district and administration were making choices based on science and facts. Now I am very disheartened at this sudden change. As parents, both my husband and I are considered high-risk individuals. I think that you need to consider families in our situation. Our children would be potentially bringing home the virus to us. At best, I would ask you to put this decision off for yet another month. At worst, please extend to March 8th so that the board can meet again to discuss data of the 100% return to capacity. Finally, I urge you to require families that travel to mandatory quarantine for a minimum of 10 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment is Melanie Toth. The flu is more dangerous to children than this virus is. Follow the science. Children need regular schedules. They need to be in school. They need to be social. They need to be active. The decisions to keep children home is damaging, hurting our children more than this virus could. Those at high risk should stay home. Those at low risk need to have the choice to return to normalcy. Don't let your fear hurt our children. Next is Anne Ramonelli for Natalia Ramonelli. My daughter wanted to comment at tonight's meeting. She is an 8th grader at Millennium. You don't get it. Having all these classes and learning through a screen all day is hard, really hard. There's less distractions in school when I can see my teachers and be with my friends. I would rather go back to school 100%. Excuse me, Michelle Roslinski is the next comment. Please approve Great Lake Bombers request to be Group 3A to use South Lyon baseball fields. Great Lakes Bombers is primarily South Lyon kids who will go to South Lyon high schools. My son's 12U team is 100% South Lyon residents. Junior League does not have resources to have enough competitive travel teams for kids, forcing them to other clubs. If those clubs are composed of South Lyon kids, they should be allowed to play on South Lyon fields. It would be the same use of fields if they were in Thunder uniforms, so the uniform shouldn't dictate field use for South Lyon kids. Next comment is at Matt Admiral. I would like to encourage the board to approve the plan for reopening the secondary schools as presented by the administration. I am a teacher at Millennium School and would really like to encourage the board to reopen the middle schools and high schools in South Lyon. I have heard many comments from parents and students that they struggle learning at home because they can't focus well. I think the students learn best at school and hope that we can reopen for all our students soon. Next comment is Jeff Lundy. I strongly support returning our kids to 4 to 5 days a week as soon as possible. The CDC states, among other things, schools help to mitigate health disparities by providing critical services, including school meal programs and social, physical, behavioral, and mental health services. Having the kids stay home is not risk-free. Next comment is Lauren Bakken. Please make the change to face-to-face instruction for all students 5 days a week. Students are suffering. Parents are losing their jobs trying to accommodate learning from home. Other districts are doing this successfully. Why can't South Lyon? The children of South Lyon are not getting a fair shot at education. Please fix this. Kristen Cumberland. Please let our kids be face-to-face in school. Being virtual for most of the school year has been detrimental to their learning experience. It's extremely frustrating to know that school systems in close proximity to us find a way to have their kids in person, yet not South Lyon. I have 3 children in these schools. We can and have to do better. Thank you for listening. Another one from Kristen Cumberland. This is in regard to the Great Lakes Bombers. I'm asking the school board to kindly consider letting the Great Lake Bomber organization use the South Lyon fields. We have lived in South Lyon for the past 20 years and have 3 children that are in the school system. This organization is a South Lyon-based travel team that has the coaching, pitching certifications, and skills set to develop my kids. Please do not penalize our children who live in South Lyon by not letting them use the school fields that are in their own community where we pay taxes.
This next one looks like a duplicate again, Jenny. Number 63.
Yep, I see that. Okay. Ryan Cartmill. My concerns are, number 1, teachers not fully vaccinated yet, new strain of more contagious COVID spreading. Seems unwise to increase in-person school near a long school break. Worried about lack of social distancing in school, especially during lunchtime. Lack of remote availability for students that have been told to quarantine due to exposure or positive test. Per Oakland County Health Department, South Lyon Schools has the highest per capita number of school-associated COVID cases in all of Oakland County. Robin Blair, the CDC says schools are the safest place for our children. The science backs this up. Please vote for the children. Vote to open the school. Kristen Untie, I am a speech language pathologist in the district and a parent of a high school junior. I teach students 5 days a week at the Early Childhood Center and have been doing so since late September. It is time for all students to be back in the classroom. Craig Skalski, I am in support of secondary students doing 4 days in person starting February 8th. The surrounding districts have shown that it can be done safely and with minimal disruption due to cases. I also recommend that Wednesdays are in person using the block schedule and alternate classes each week. If South Lyon schools cannot make this plan work for this semester, I am concerned about the prospects for the fall. If the board does not approve this proposed plan, I may need to consider alternate school options. Angie Badish, social distancing is impossible at the secondary level at 100%. It's impossible in most classrooms, the lunchrooms, the buses, and the hallways. There will be COVID spikes at 100%. There will be students, classes, and even buildings that have to quarantine, disrupting our instructional continuity. Keeping the face-to-face at 50% works. It meets the needs of the community and the students. It's structured. We need to make everyone safe more than we need to make them happy. Karen McCullough, she plans to call in. Karen, if you're on the line, *6 to unmute.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not opposed to kids in school, but both the CDC and Michigan guidelines clearly state for students to be safely in school and must include proper protocols. Facts commonly ignored in the argument. Disregarding 6-foot spacing is not recommended and represents the highest risk. The following statement is Michigan's absolute minimum if schools continue to hold in-person classes. This statement is the last recommended after 6 feet or a hybrid model is considered and reads as follows. If a school district nonetheless proceeds with in-person learning, at a minimum, it should maintain minimum seated distance of 3 feet in classrooms, consider the feasibility of installing barriers, and ensure that when students are eating lunch with mask off, they maintain 6 feet of physical distance to the extent feasible. So please forgive me if you later address these issues. But why is the district choosing to ignore best practices when we have students in school right now? The common comparison to house schools is irrelevant. They are not immune to spread as evidenced by yesterday's school-related outbreak list. Not one, but 2 separate instances at the high school and elementary level. Yesterday's update also identified 15 secondary schools and 62 individuals impacted. Hastings High School had a 13-student outbreak, closing their high school for over 2 weeks just recently. To say spread does not occur in school is simply false, as proven by the database. Every week for several months, the state has updated this list. If spread is not in the classroom, then identify what other event feeds this database, such as extracurriculars or practices. Why not consider a modified February approach where all students maintain their hybrid schedule, and students that truly need the extra in-class days submit a statement from appropriate professionals? I would rather allow students that actually need further educational support receive it while keeping class sizes to the absolute minimum necessary for the continuity of instruction and safety. Second, what plan exists for quarantined secondary students lacking classroom access? What happens with spring assessment or the nearly 50 AP class sections which have limited test windows if they quarantine? Oakland County's toolkit. Schools should ensure that plans are in place for remote instruction for students who may need to isolate or quarantine. Howell had 22 secondary cases in January while never disclosing quarantine numbers. Huron Valley Schools, as of today, has handled 9 secondary cases, 197 quarantined after 2 weeks of 100% attendance. So what will the cafeteria do to maintain spacing near 6 feet? What about random weekly surveillance testing of select classrooms as offered by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services? Fifth, what about adding HEPA filtration units to those classrooms with high...
Okay, thank you for your call. Patrick McGuire. First off, I'd like to thank the superintendent and board for the thought they've put into important scheduling decisions. Like all parents, I wish COVID was over. Everything was back to normal and we could go back to the way things were in years past. Sadly, that isn't the case. I urge the community and board alike to remember that we're all in ever-changing pandemic. This requires that we be flexible and open to the idea that while face-to-face may be safe today, but that may change tomorrow. Mr. Abate, would you like to start at number 71?
Sure, I was just going to offer after the call because they had quite a few there.
Yeah.
Happy to help.
Yeah.
Let me get myself going here on the spreadsheet. All right. Number 71 is Amanda Berman. I strongly urge the board to continue with the hybrid model. I urge the board to recognize that the current model allows for CDC requires social distancing, and most importantly, continuity and equal access to instruction for all students, those that are healthy, those that are sick, and those that are quarantined. I urge the community and board to realize that we are still in the midst of a pandemic, and the hybrid model keeps students and staff safe and gives our students the most stable routine. Next is Mrs. Oliver. Please vote yes to return all students to face-to-face immediately. We have pleaded this entire school year to make this happen. With current recommendations from government agencies saying they should happen, I don't see any other reason that we can't. We've watched many school districts make this happen safely and effectively since August. We can do this and we should. Our kids deserve the effort involved and they deserve to feel important enough for our district to make this happen. Next is Matt and Christy Stevens. And they just say Great Lake Bombers field use request. Next, Gina Hushgraber. Sorry about that. Please keep our kids in school. Send all our kids to 4 to 5 day school. Make the change and make our kids a #1 priority. Our district has suffered enough from this debacle. People are moving out of the district. If things don't change, our schools will be rated even worse, and that is so sad for this area. Don't disappoint the students and taxpayers again and again. Next up, we have Chris Costa, and he's going to call in. Mr. Costa, are you there?
Hello, board. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go for it.
Hey, board members. Thank you for taking the time to hear my thoughts and concerns. I am a current South Lyon teacher. I would like to share my thoughts regarding the proposed return to 100% face-to-face instruction. If this occurs, will we lose the inability to maintain the educational continuity that we now have in place? Currently, a student who is ill or quarantined has the opportunity to still receive live instruction. They simply log into a Google Meet and receive instruction from their teacher. That will not be the case if we return to 100%, as Google Meets are not going to be an expectation that teachers must do. In our current mode of instruction, students meet live with their teachers 5 days a week, with 2 being in person, and they also have the flexibility to stay at home if not feeling well and get live interactions with their teachers. If you do make the decision to move to 100% face-to-face, you should be prepared for the large increase in more students need to be quarantined. Those quarantined students, as I mentioned prior, will then lose the live interaction of the delivery of their education. I can also tell you, although neighboring districts have returned to full in-person learning, I think many are unaware of the lack of consistent instruction those students who need to be quarantined who are ill receive. They are not dealing with issues. To think they're not dealing with issues is a gross misunderstanding. Those neighboring districts have hundreds of students that need to be quarantined. So I can tell you that one thing I've learned in my 22 years teaching here in South Lyon is that consistency and routine are key to a student's well-being and success. I urge you not to move to 100% and continue to keep the current mode of instruction for the better of all students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Next is Sue Young. Regarding the Bombers and Mr. Skrelly's comments about overusage. If SLJL kids move to the Bombers, those spots will be taken up in the SLJL by other kids who otherwise might not have had a chance to play. It wouldn't be a one-to-one replacement. The number of kids would most likely increase, and there would be overusage and scheduling conflicts. Next up is PJ Schoeck. I'm sorry, I messed that name up. South Lyon schools need to be in person as much as possible. We've all had enough. Everyone agrees that children learn best by in-person learning. It's time to get all kids in the classroom 4 to 5 days per week. Surrounding districts are doing this. The science is in support of kids in school. There are numerous statistics on suicide rates, depression, drug use, etc. Enough is enough. Next is Jill Adams. Keeping hybrid of 2 days per week is the comment. We have Matt and Christy Stevens commenting on the Bombers. I urge the board to approve the usage of baseball fields for the Great Lakes Bombers program. The majority of Bombers families live in the South Lyon area and also attend South Lyon schools. These players will then move on to play baseball at either South Lyon or South Lyon East High School. Please approve this request and keep our kids playing baseball at the fields in our community. Thank you. Valerie Harrison is next. It is far too early to bring secondary students back to 100% in-person learning. Considering the South Lyon School District is the worst of all Oakland County school districts for positivity rates and the fast-spreading variants, this move puts our children, our teachers, and citizens at risk. Next is Jean Katie. Why is this hard? Everyone who is not comfortable in school, the virtual pathway is at your disposal. Everyone else wants to be back in school with in-person instruction. The rest of this is just noise. Let me also call the ball in the air. It would be terrible if these independent study Wednesdays became permanent next year. Do your professional development in the summer. Please educate my kids for 180 days. Aaron Wilson is next. Please vote in favor of the administration's proposed plan for secondary students. My daughter is sick and tired of being on a screen all day. She's desperate to attend school more in person. Families that chose the hybrid did this knowing the goal was to get students back in person as much as possible. School districts around us have had secondary back for 4 to 5 days with great success. It is time to put our children and students first and get them back in the classroom. Ed Hardesty is next. Stop with the politics. We are South Lyon, not Livonia. It is essential to have these kids in school. Follow the science and make it mandatory to be at school and hold the parents accountable. I know several of you on the board would be very disappointed if we don't get this right. We have to learn to live with this as we do the flu, chickenpox, and any other fear parents have. School is essential, and the fact that we are even at this point is absurd. Get it right, folks. Next, we have Todd Slisher, and it is a call-in. Mr. Slisher, are you with us?
Mr. Abate, he also has a written comment right behind that one too. So
Right.
I don't know if that meant he changed his mind.
Maybe I can go ahead and I'll go ahead and read that and we'll circle back. Not yet the correct time to return to school full-time. The fast-spreading variant down the road in Ann Arbor is driving up rates. Now is not the time to put this into effect. If Mr. Slisher, if you're there at some point, you're welcome to unmute. But we do have another call-in, and it is Dan Argentati. Are you there, sir?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, I have a comment. Anything less than 5 days, 100% in-person teaching is insufficient at this point when these kids have not been in school since last March. It is not too late to salvage the remainder of the year if we go to normal school year again. There is no reason to have an entire day for cleaning. Other school districts in the state are on 5 days and have been, as well as schools in other states. The virus is transferred from people, not from stationary structures that are being cleaned. Please allow these kids to get back to a normal 5-day week. No other entity is closing for a day for cleaning, so why are we? Private schools have figured out how to do this for 5 days a week. South Lyon needs to learn from other districts and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jen Gunderson is next. Why is there objection to our secondary students returning full-time just as our elementary students have been safely doing even without smaller class sizes and social distancing? In-person learning means in-person learning, not part-time online learning from a classroom. As a board in the past, you supported the administration's plan, whether we agreed or not. Please do the same now and support our administration's plan to return our secondary students to school full-time. Kelly Haynes is next. Please continue to allow the hybrid option and allow the current schedule that blends in-person and at-home learning. Don't undo the work we've done with only 3 months left in the school year. Next is Aiden Moorhead. Hi, I am Aiden Moorhead, a sophomore at South Lyon High School. The reasons to return in person don't outweigh the dangers. Evidently, we don't have the infrastructure to deal with 100% return to school. In my first hour, there are 32 people. There's barely enough room to fit that amount of people in a classroom, ignoring the need for social distancing. As a student who struggles with mental health issues, returning 100% would be far more harmful than maintaining this model until vaccination. And our final comment of the evening so far is Jim McCullough. Schools are responsible for public health and safety every day. The decision of how safe falls directly on the district. Statements such as it is not possible to have full attendance and social distancing says it all. If you know you can prevent an incident from happening or intentionally making things worse, shouldn't that be the goal? And that is the conclusion of our comments.
Okay, thank you. For anyone that called in and didn't actually call in or had planned to call in and didn't, we're going to have a second public comment period towards the end of the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Tell and Mr. Abate, for helping read those. Okay, now we are moving on to item 4, which is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved. I'll support.
Okay, that was a motion by Mr. Leftwich, support by Mr. Kennedy. Is there any discussion? Mr. Tell, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Abate,
Yes.
Mr. Leftwich,
Yes.
Ms. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Dashner,
I vote yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
I vote yes.
Mr. Schweigler,
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. That brings us on to item 5, approval of minutes. We have the January 19, 2021 organizational regular meeting minutes. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
So it's a motion moved by Mr. Abate, supported by Mr. Leftwich. Any discussion? Mr. Tell, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Dashner.
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Ms. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Leftwich,
Yes.
Mr. Leftwich, and Mr. Abate.
Yes.
And Mr. Abate.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. That brings us up to item 6, which is approval of bills. We have the February 2021 bond bills. Can I get a motion, please?
I will move to approve the February 2021 bond bills.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Schwegler, supported by Mr. Abate. Any discussion? Mr. Tell, can you call the roll again, please?
Yes. Mr. Dashner,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Abate,
Yes.
Mr. Leftwich,
Yes.
and Ms. McDowell.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. The next item on our agenda is check signatures. When we approved our 6 check signatures at our organizational meetings, names were used for the positions rather than just the positions themselves. So what we're doing is bringing this item back to clean it up and just have the positions named. What that does is it makes it so that if somebody were to leave their position, they no longer have the authority to do the items that we're stating. So what we're looking for is a motion that would include the positions that are able to do the payroll checks, accounts payables, and board expenditures.
I'll move to make those changes.
I can support that.
Okay, we have a motion by Abate and supported by Mr. Kennedy. Is there any questions, comments, discussion? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Tell, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Leftwich,
Yes.
Ms. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Abate,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
I vote yes.
I vote yes, and Mr. Dashner.
I vote yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 8 on our agenda is a teacher recommendation for hire. Mr. Archibald, is this you taking it?
It is. Thank you very much, President Dashner. The following educator has been hired for the 2021 school year to replace a recently retired teacher. We have brought on board Mallory Buddha. Mallory has a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics from the University of Michigan, Dearborn. She comes to us with 3 years of experience teaching a variety of mathematics courses, 1 year at the Cheryl Stockwell Academy, and 2 years most recently at Howell High School. She also brings with her some coaching experience in cross country and track and field. So again, Ms. Buddha has already started, and we are delighted to have her on board at South Lyon at the high school as well as with the district. And we're asking that the board approve this hiring as stated in the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Can I get a motion?
I will move to hire Ms. Buddha effective January 21st for high school math.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Kennedy, support by Mr. Tell. Is there any questions, comments, or discussion?
I actually do have one quick question for Mr. Archibald. So this was a short notice hiring, correct?
Short notice, I'm not sure I know what you mean. We're replacing a retired teacher.
Right. When did the teacher announce the retirement recently, though, right? Not, you didn't have a lot of notice to replace this position?
I don't have that information in front of me exactly when the retirement came in.
So here's my question. Is it really hard to replace teachers right now? I'm just curious for an unrelated topic, but since this is here, I don't know how hard it is to replace teachers right now or how hard it is to find
in general, it is a challenge not only to find subs, but to hire teachers in general. South Lyon High School had typically to find a math teacher would not be, and some of the common subject areas would not be difficult. South Lyon High School spent a considerable amount of time earlier this school year trying to secure a math teacher. So it is a little bit more of a challenge now than perhaps typical.
Okay. I'm just curious on the state of hiring. That's all. Nothing in particular about this person. She seems great.
We know she is and are glad she's on board.
Good.
Okay, with that, Mr. Tell, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Ms. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Leftwich?
Yes.
Mr. Abate?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Schwegler?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
And Mr. Dashner?
I vote yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item number 9 on our agenda is the MASB Board of Directors election. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. There's a vacancy on the 2021 Michigan Association of School Boards Board of Directors for our Region 8. The bios of the 4 candidates have been provided in your enclosures for your review. Additionally, I emailed earlier this week with the process that I proposed for doing this, which would be for each one of us to list our top candidate for that. We would tally up the scores and then do a runoff on the top 2 of them. And if there's ties, we will do tiebreakers on those. Did anyone have any concerns with the process I laid out? Okay, hearing none, what we'll do is we will go through the roll, and if each board member, instead of giving a yes or no, could respond with their candidate of choice, it'll either be Miss McQuistion, Miss McQuistion, Miss Hanser, Miss Walker, or Miss Dookie. Mr. Tell, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Abate?
I vote Miss McQuiston.
Ms. McDowell?
Ms. Dookie?
Mr. Dashner?
I vote Miss McQuistion. Sorry.
Mr. Kennedy?
I vote also for Miss McQuiston.
Sorry, I'm losing my track of Mr. Schwegler.
I'm actually going to vote for Miss Dookie as well.
Mr. Leftwich?
Miss McQuiston.
And I vote for Ms. McQuiston as well.
Okay, so that is one.
So we
two,
have
three,
5 for
four.
McQuiston and 2 for Dookie.
Yes, and with that, I would propose that we as a board nominate Ms. McQuistion, since a runoff would probably have the exact same results of the top 2.
I will support that and move to nominate Ms. McQuiston.
Can I get support for that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. It's nominated, motion by Schwegler, Support by Mr. Abate. I assume there's no discussion on it. Okay, Mr.
Mr.
Tell.
Dash,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. If I could just bring a matter up for discussion. I wouldn't mind an opportunity to look back at the two candidates now that we have narrowed down to two. You did lay out the process, and I think it would be nice to fulfill that process. I would really like to take a second look. I have worked a little bit with Miss McQuiston in the preliminary work that I've done with that body, but I wouldn't mind another pause to take a look at both candidates myself, since that was your first suggestion, if that's okay with the rest of the board.
I guess I'm not clear on what, are you asking for another round of voting on the two or more discussion on the candidates? I'm not completely clear on what you're asking for.
What was your was the intent to finish the voting tonight?
That was our intent, yes.
Okay, if that was the intent, then I that's what I would like to do, and I would like to retract what I said and proceed with this vote.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
That's okay, and I apologize.
Okay, with that, Mr. Tell, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. I vote yes. Mr. Abate?
Yes.
Mr. Leftwich?
I will vote yes.
Ms. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Dashner?
I vote yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
I vote yes.
And Mr. Schweigler?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. Item number 10 on our...
Mr. Dashner, am I correct that the Mrs. Weimer will submit the official ballot on behalf of the district? Is that correct?
Yes. Please. Okay, that brings us to item 10, Great Lakes Bombers Facility Use Group Classification Request. I'm assuming we have Ms. Witt online for this.
Good evening. The Great Lakes Bombers has submitted all required administrative documents and are requesting to the district to be approved as a Group 3A status, and it was presented to the board at the January 19th meeting. Since the school district recognizes that the primary purpose of school facilities is to implement the instructional programs for all students, the Board of Education has approved the classifications Group 1, Group 2, Group 3A, Group 3B, and Group 4 based on priority for the purpose of allowing the scheduling usage of school facilities. For each group, there is a different usage fee structure as well as different requirements. In order for an athletic league to be obtained or to obtain Group 3A status, the organization must also be approved by the board, and they have also met the administrative guidelines. It is the administrative's recommendation that the board vote on Great Lakes Bombers obtaining 3A status.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I'll get the ball rolling and move to approve the Great Lakes Bombers Facility Use Group Classification Request.
Support.
So we have a motion by Mr. Kennedy, support by Mr. Abate. Is there any discussion?
So just so I'm clear on the process, that this is a group that has met the paperwork requirements, and we're at a point now where, after our discussion last time, it's really just the board's decision on whether or not this kind of meets the same. Okay, I appreciate the input from callers and during public comment, but when we look at the list of other organizations that have 3A status, like Kiwanis and Pumpkin Fest and South Lyon Junior League, these are really like South Lyon institutions that really make our community. And I don't believe that Bombers have reached that similar kind of defining status, when it comes to like describing our community. And so I will not support this.
I do have a couple questions. One, just to clarify, as a are they already approved as a 3B group?
The 3B does not need approval. So pertaining to what they submit, if they are not approved as a group 3A, Chris and I would either classify them as a 3B or a 4, depending on the requirements for each of those groups.
So if they came to Chris to ask, or I don't know if it's to you directly or to Chris, but if they came to ask for usage of the fields for practice and games, they can already do that today. They just, as far as I understand, they haven't done that, but they could do that if they want to.
That is correct. It is my understanding this is their first request, and it's been requested that they get group 3A status. It is my understanding that they have not utilized our fields previously as a group 3B or a group 4.
I actually wonder if they understand that as a group 3B, which they likely would be considered, they can already ask. The next question I had is what's the difference in fee structure, if you know that off the top of your head, between a group 3A and a group 3B? I didn't know if there was.
I do not know the difference. I do know that group 3B status does have a small fee. It's lower than the fee of a group 4 status, and the group 3A status has no fee.
Okay. And then do we have the ability to rescind the usage of group 3A status? Is there any mechanism? I think you kind of touched on this last time, that it's really hard to rescind it. So if we find out, for instance, that the majority of the kids are not South Lyon students and they start bringing in a lot of outside students, can we push, if it's brought to our attention, can we audit and then put them back in the group 3B status?
The policy currently does not speak to rescinding the group 3A status. So what the board might want to do is look at changing the policy of the facility use group fee structure and put that guideline in there on how we would rescind and what we would require for that. That would be my suggestion. Currently, the facility policy does not talk about rescinding group 3A status.
You haven't released the committees yet, right, Craig?
Judy has those. I don't think they've been forwarded.
Is this something that we should do before this vote, or is that something, if we want to consider that, that's something we can always change in policy after this vote, correct?
Correct. I think so. I mean, I guess my take on it, and we could dig into it further, but from a policy standpoint, if our policy doesn't prohibit rescinding, I think we would have the authority to do that. If we can give, we should be able to take away.
I guess for me, I don't have anybody involved in the Bombers. None of my boys play baseball or are old enough to do that yet. But if it really is a group of athletes that are primarily involved, in our community, if they live in this community, they go to school in our community, I don't see, just because they're newer, why we would hold them to a different standard, assuming they know that if they don't hold that standard, they're going to lose the privilege. That's kind of how I feel. If this is our group of students primarily, we should probably support them, even if they haven't built up the reputation that some of the other groups have.
Would it be a board policy requirement if we were to ask for a yearly audit of all the teams just to make sure they meet that 75% status, like an official spreadsheet that says, okay, for the 2021 year, Bombers, you have 82%, South Lyon Junior League has 92%, lacrosse has X percent, just to make sure that we are holding all teams accountable to that 3A status?
If the board wishes for us to do that, I spoke with was communicating with Chris earlier today. We can request that information from current Group 3A status. And just to let you know, Chris and his team did verify the addresses on the rosters, and all their teams have met the 75%.
the junior league or Bombers or both?
Bombers. We have not asked for the Bombers, but what the we did not ask for the junior league. But the Bombers submitted, Chris verified the residency and the addresses his team did. We have not gotten a roster from the junior league in a while, but we have no problem, and we can request that from them if the board wishes us to do that, to re-verify them.
Thank you.
A question I had asked before. Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
No, the only comment I was going to have was, one, I have a little bit of concern just because I know the amount of community support that the junior league has done with the schools, above and beyond just their, I don't even know what they're called, their equipment boxes at each field and things like that. I know there's been, financial help with fencing and bases and things like that. So to that respect, I am in support of the junior league, but then the opposite, I don't necessarily have any reason to not allow the Bombers. It almost feels like a popularity contest at this point. But anyway, that's my only concern is I know how much the junior league has put financially into the community with both the schools and parks and municipalities in the area.
I mean, I think it would be fair to say that if the Bombers are their own organization, that they should have to supply their own equipment to maintain, the fields, their own rakes, maybe their own bases, whatever those items are. It would make sense that they'd have to provide their own. I don't know if we actually got the answer to the question from last time about capacity and if this is going to cause issues with scheduling.
Chris and I discussed this, and I did have a conversation with Craig about it. It will impact scheduling. We can't necessarily indicate exactly. I'm sorry. We can't exactly tell you exactly how that's going to impact scheduling. Sometimes the junior league has fields scheduled at a certain time, and our staff will go by and nobody will be on it necessarily. So we don't, just because they're scheduled, I'm sorry, I got a little distracted there, but it will have some scheduling hindrance on the current Group 3A status with our elementary softball fields.
And does that have more to do with the population growth in town or just teams competing against each other? Because I mean, our population in the town is quite a bit higher than it was, say, 10 years ago.
It's hard to tell you exactly how that's going to hinder the junior league and their scheduling. Like I said, they'll have fields scheduled sometimes. When I reviewed this with our facility team, they'll have fields scheduled sometimes and no teams will be out on the field that they have scheduled. So I don't know if the team decided not to go out there and practice, but we have softball fields at almost every single elementary school. And it seems like they will schedule all those fields, but not have a team at every single field. So will we be able to schedule all the Bombers and all the junior league fields? They're going to have to share them. So the junior league's not going to be able to schedule all the fields. We would have to do that on a fair basis between both clubs if they're both approved. Right now, the junior league basically is the only one that uses our elementary field. So if we allow another club to come in and use those fields, there's going to be scheduling conflicts when they never had to deal with them before, if you understand what I'm saying. But we can't tell you exactly how much that's going to impact them.
I think as long as you're scheduling a field, it should be in use unless there's a good reason for it. So if they're not using all the fields, but they are being scheduled, then... To
their defense, nobody else really was using them. So...
Well, that makes it hard to understand capacity when they do that. That's what I'm getting at. But I understand your point.
Mrs. Witt, if I could ask a question. My assumption is that this is going to create some issues within our organization because now we have two, call it competing organizations on the same level. looking for the same locations at the same time, and that is going to put you or maybe Mr. Bullinger or somebody in that department in a position of trying to figure out how to split access between two entities. I assume we've got nothing to draw on from that, and we'll have to be making something up from scratch.
We have not encountered this before because currently all of our Group 3A organizations, there is only one sports team that's been approved currently. So this will be the first time we would approve one sport team having two teams. So we will come up with, if the board approves the Great Lake Bombers, Chris and I will come up with a fair way to accommodate their requests on as them being at the same level, if that makes sense.
I guess the one last comment I'll make, and it was somewhat dismayed by some of the comments we got from the public via email since our last meeting, that we're showing the Bombers group as having had access to our fields for practices, things of that nature, when they haven't ever contracted for the use of our fields. It's a bad look for a community organization that's looking for a benefit for being a community organization. It does give me a little bit of pause on, I don't want to say motives, but just their actions. Any further comments? Okay, Ms. Hertel, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Abate.
You're on mute, Mr. Abate.
I'm there. I vote yes.
Mr. Leftwich.
I vote no.
Mr. Kennedy.
I vote yes.
Mr. Dashner.
I vote no.
Ms. McDowell.
No.
Mr. Schwegler.
I'm going to vote yes, and I'm going to follow up with policy afterwards if it passes.
Great, I'm the tiebreaker. Talk about being completely 50-50 on this one. I'm going to vote no.
Okay, motion fails 4-3. Just a second, I'm trying to get my notes in. Okay. The next item on our list is item number 11. It's the South Lyon Community Schools Extended COVID-19 Learning Plan reconfirmation. Mr. Archibald.
Thank you, Mr. Dashner. I just have a few brief comments, and then I'll turn it over to members of CETA for the brief presentation prior to the vote. I want to acknowledge our students who called in and spoke so articulately, including several of the students who I had an opportunity to speak with just randomly at our high schools over the last couple of days, and just appreciating their candor and feedback, and we should all be proud of how our students represent their families and our school district. I've often said that individuals who speak ill of young people today simply don't have the privilege to work with them, because it is an honor and a gift to be able to do that. So I want to acknowledge them. In addition to tonight, we have received numerous communications over the past several weeks regarding in-person instruction. The common theme is that everyone seems to recognize the benefits and trying to maximize in-person instruction for students. There is considerable difference of opinion and for valid reasons on both sides with respect to the how and the when. Following the mitigation strategies from the roadmap, and although the roadmap is no longer in force, those mitigation strategies which we have implemented remain effective and remain in place. And the protocols outlined in the state of Michigan guidelines for operating schools safely. We do believe that the schools can be a low risk, not eliminate risk. I don't want to mislead anybody, but a low risk environment. I also want to be very transparent in that, as it's been mentioned several times, and it will come up in the presentation, while we are working to maximize space in our classrooms, in many cases, it will be no more than 3 feet between students seated. Obviously, as our neighboring districts have observed, an increase in in-person attendance will result in additional students being quarantined. That will be an added challenge, and that will be something that we have a plan in place to address. The proposal that we'll bring forward tonight, we think balances as best we can the concerns that we've been hearing, and it does provide for a transition period to move to in-person learning in an increased level at the secondary level of secondary schools over the course of the next 2 school weeks. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Kudwa, and I may call on some other cabinet members to fill in as well.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Next slide, please. So a recap of where we are currently today as we approach this new recommendation. So for our elementary students, some of our students are in the virtual learning pathway. They will continue in that virtual learning pathway. Students in the hybrid remote model at elementary are attending 4 full days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday being that remote day. At our middle school and high school, students in the VLP pathway will continue in that VLP pathway. And students who are in the hybrid remote are currently attending 2 in-person days based on what their last name is. They're either there Monday, Tuesday, or they are there Thursday, Friday. And then the other group switches with them. We do have some students who have been assigned 4 days based on additional needs that they have. And Wednesday is a remote day for all of our students. What we are proposing is the following. For elementary, we are not making any recommended changes. We do want to note that we do not plan to make recommendations that change anything at elementary. We plan to move forward for the balance of the year with those 4 days in person, with Wednesdays remaining remote. At middle and high school, our virtual learning pathway students would not be impacted by what we are proposing tonight. For our hybrid and in-person pathway students, beginning next Monday, February 8th, we are proposing that the students have the opportunity to attend the additional 2 days. So if they were assigned Monday, Tuesday, they can choose to attend Thursday and Friday. If they were assigned Thursday and Friday, they could choose to attend Monday and Tuesday. So they could attend up to all 4 days of the in-person instruction that are offered if they chose to do so. And then beginning Monday, March 1st, we are proposing that it switch to be all of those students attending all 4 days. So 100% of the students on those 4 days, with Wednesdays remaining a remote day. So for our secondary piece, we are looking at offering those 4 in-person days for the balance of the year. We are making some adjustments to the lunch schedule at the high school. So we are adding in a 4th lunch so that we can balance out that distancing. And we are continuing with some of the health and safety protocols that we have in place today. So mask wearing, that daily screener for students and for staff, our cleaning and disinfecting protocols. We're limiting the sharing of materials. We did purchase additional tables, and they have arrived for all of the 4 secondary buildings for their cafeterias, which would allow us to maintain the current spacing that we're utilizing during lunches. And we do anticipate continuing with that block schedule to minimize exposure. So I know some people have asked questions around that, but a good example might be if a student woke up on Sunday morning with some symptoms and we go back those 2 days that we need to consider to figure out who needs to quarantine. When we look at that Friday, we would only have 4th, 5th, and 6th hour blocks to look at as opposed to their entire day. So it does not reduce the number of people we are quarantining in all cases, but in some cases it does cut in half the number of students or staff that we might have to quarantine. And then again, we are quarantining and isolating infected or exposed individuals, which does help to mitigate the spread in our community. So we did walk through all 4 secondary buildings with their administration to review and discuss what needed to be adjusted if we brought 100% of students back. Building administrators are working with individual teachers where they need to adjust individual classrooms. And again, as Mr. Archibald said, we're not able to maintain 6 feet of spacing in all of the spaces of our building, but our goal is to maintain that 3 feet of spacing between the students within the classroom. And where that's not possible, have additional mitigation measures in place, like physical barriers. So we'll be adding plexiglass or have added plexiglass in some classrooms. And we've adjusted seating in others. So for example, the labs at South Lyon High School, we added in televisions so that we can move students around the classroom and put students in a wider amount of the room. So we did review arrival and dismissal at all 4 secondary buildings. That's going well now. We anticipate we can scale up to 100% of students without having to adjust those procedures. Again, it's that 15-minute cumulative. So as students are doing that quick entry into the building and quick exit from the building, that is not contributing in most cases to anyone needing to be quarantined. We are continuing with the practice of allowing secondary students to be very fast. Lunches in the cafeteria will remain grab and go. That again also moves that line for the lunchroom quickly so that they're able to get their lunch and get seated very fast. And then as far as the classroom setup, we're maximizing that spacing between the individuals as much as we possibly can. We're putting in additional mitigation measures in some spaces. We've limited the sharing of materials, continuing in many cases with paperless assignments. And then we do have those hand sanitizing stations in all classrooms. So during that transition model, so starting February 8th and running up until March 1st, we would continue with the current instructional model that includes synchronous live instruction for all students, which includes our quarantined students. Students would need to still bring their electronic devices with them to access assignments and collaborate with peers. That helps us to maintain social distancing in classrooms. And Wednesdays would still remain remote instruction. And then when needed, we would transition in-person instruction to remote. So if we had a large spike in the community, we've said that all along in the plan, that we would make those changes as needed. And then the other piece that we have in the plan we're presenting you with tonight is that if we needed to extend that transition period due to cases in the community, we could extend that potentially past that March 1st date. And if you recall, we have a board meeting on March 2nd. So our power within that current proposed plan would really just be those 2 days, which would give you time to discuss it again at that March 2nd board meeting. After that transition period, we would shift the focus in the classrooms to really being where students were not focusing on a Google Meet to receive their instruction, but focusing on the teacher who was in front of them in person. So they would still need electronic devices because they will still be using our Google Classrooms to access some assignments, and in some cases to collaborate with peers so that we can keep them apart, but still let them work together. Wednesdays remain remote, and we do have a plan for quarantine instruction that offers options to classroom teachers about what will work best for them and for their students and for their content areas. And in our proposal, what that would look like is they would each share that to their Google Classrooms. Parents could see what each teacher's plan would be if their student were quarantined.
Mrs. Schoeck, let me jump in if I may, and Ms. Ingblom, bring you to the podium. I know we're talking secondary, but if you could please, because we did mention maintaining the 4 days at the elementary, and I think it's important, and it came up in several of the comments that it's more than just cleaning, and that folks understand the significance and importance of the schedule as we have it currently and how it's operating.
So there are really 2 very significant purposes for that elementary remote Wednesday. So one of the components that we've built into the Remote Wednesday is really vital in helping us maintain in-person instruction the other 4 days of the week. So this year, it's been critical that we reduce the strain on our guest teacher system in any way possible. So one of the things that we've done at the elementary level is that we've taken a lot of those meetings that typically happen during the school day. So IEP meetings, 504 meetings, child study meetings, problem solving meetings, other meetings that might be scheduled with families that would require a guest teacher. We've moved those into the Wednesday afternoon so that a guest teacher is now no longer required. So that means anytime that we are using a guest teacher at the elementary level, it's for a true teacher absence. So it's really eliminated that strain on the guest teacher system on the other 4 days for in-person instruction. The other really critical element for the Remote Wednesday is providing students the opportunity to interact directly with their classroom teacher, so the quarantined students. So at the elementary level, when a student is quarantined, teachers are able to provide assignments, they're able to provide activities, they're able to post things to Google Classroom or to Seesaw. We have worked to provide them opportunities to check in with other staff members over the course of the week. But Wednesday provides the opportunity for them to join a classroom lesson while their classroom is remote. But more than that, it gives an opportunity for the teacher to provide instruction directly to them through a separate meet later on in the day. We think it's incredibly important that when those students are absent over that extended period of time, that they have that personalized check-in and interaction directly with their classroom teacher who knows them best, who is able to provide them with that direct support that is specific to them, their learning, and their needs. And so the Remote Wednesday really provides us the opportunity to do that.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Weber, you were not going to get off the hook. If you wouldn't mind just sharing some of the highlights, because certainly the other point with the additional quarantine, our current model has been effective in helping us work with the quarantine students. But if you would talk to not only the structure for the Wednesdays, and we've been encouraged throughout this process to talk to some of our neighboring districts who have been working through this, and they certainly have not been out without their struggles, but have stressed to us the importance and benefit of maintaining a 4-day week as opposed to a 5-day week, and how we're utilizing Wednesday. But also, if you could just give some highlights to the quarantine plan. Again, there'll be much more detail to be shared, but I want to assure people that we do have a plan in place, and we'll be rolling more detail out following the transition period.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Archibald. First, I will speak to what our current Wednesday schedule at the secondary level is, the purpose behind it, and what it is being utilized for. That Wednesday schedule has been built as a support time for secondary students. And during that time, students meet with each of their classroom teachers. So they meet with all 6 teachers in live meets on Wednesdays. And during that time, they are able to get support from both their teacher and then also from other support staff members, depending on the student and their level of need, which could be case managers, it could be social workers, speech and language teachers, OT, PT, English language development teachers, just to name a few of those different support providers. That time is also utilized for students to complete redos and retakes, which has been especially critical this year. As we all know, learning is not normal this year, and it has been a stress and a strain on students. And giving them time and the ability to be able to make sure that they have mastered material this year is especially important for moving their learning forward. That time is also utilized by teachers to both reteach and also extend students' learning by reinforcing concepts. They can use small group instruction. They can meet one-on-one with students to conference about their work. Students can be working on long-term assignments and projects. Teachers are also able to do whole class activities that are reteaching in nature or reinforcement of concepts or ideas. They are able to give them extension activities. And then our AP teachers are able to give additional content during that time because they are under probably one of the most strict scope and sequences out there. And they really have not been given any leeway by College Board this year. So they are given that time to make sure that they can continue those classes moving forward as well. Now, speaking to the proposed plan that we've put out tonight, for secondary students, I know quarantine is a huge concern, but I do want you to know that we have a plan in place for teachers to be able to put together a plan for each of their classes that makes the most sense for their content area, their grade level, and the students that they have in front of them. We know that students who are out for an extended period of time, we need to educate them. We need to make sure that they're caught up with their peers. So teachers have a number of different options in order to do that. It could be things from like opening up a Google Meet with some quarantined students while they are in a block period with in-person students, if that works for that teacher. Recording a video of direct instruction. It could be posting instructional videos for the student who is quarantined, along with detailed assignments and activities. Live streaming is also an option, although I will be frank that it's not viable in all of our classrooms in our district, just because of the way that some of our buildings are constructed and the technology and where it's located in the classrooms. Those are all options for teachers. That's not an exhaustive list for how they can manage getting instructions to students. They are also going to be continuing to utilize Google Classroom at the secondary level to post assignments and activities, so students know where to get their things that they need for classes. So that will be consistent for students even as we transition back into in-person instruction. And we have also told teachers that we need to be flexible with grading and assessment with quarantine students. We know that they're going to need some extra time to be able to get caught up if they are out for an extended period of time, even if they are getting, instruction in real time. Being out of the classroom, out away from your peers and your teacher does require some extra time to get caught up. And so we have made sure that teachers are aware of that. And lastly, teachers are going to communicate these plans within Google Classroom. So students and parents are able to take a look at that. And if they have questions, they can certainly communicate with the teacher to make sure that their child's needs are being met. Any other questions, Mr. Archibald?
No, I thank you both very much for that detailed information. And I'll turn it back over to Mrs. Kudwa to bring it home.
Okay. So our background information tonight, the extended COVID-19 learning plan was presented to the Board of Education on September 21st, 2020. The Oakland ISD did approve the district's extended COVID-19 learning plan on September 30th. We are required to reconfirm once every month thereafter the instructional delivery method, along with reviewing the weekly two-way interaction rates. At this time, the administrative team is recommending increasing secondary in-person instructional days as detailed in the plan. Our weekly two-way interaction rates are included in the report and are well above the required 75%. And we do recommend that you approve the extended COVID-19 learning plan as presented.
Thank you to the superintendent and the cabinet team. We appreciate the presentation you provided. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve the South Lyon Extended COVID-19 Learning Plan reconfirmation.
I'll support because I want to discuss it.
Okay, I'll say motion by Ertel, supported by Schwegler. Discussion?
I don't need to go first, though. Someone else can go first.
Might as well start us off, Dan.
Okay. I'll start off with just a couple things and give others an opportunity. I guess one of my biggest concerns with the plan as presented is making the decision to go 100% in person today, not knowing how fluid this situation can be. But to make that 100% in person effective March 1st, as opposed to having an alternative for going 100% in person, just to see how this plays out. And I'll explain why. I was always under the assumption that, at the 50% level, many students were attending when they were supposed to go in person. And what I'm hearing often and consistently is that the number of students attending on their day is significantly less than 50%. So as a person who really likes to look at data, I'm looking at the cases, I'm looking at the number of students quarantined, and I'm thinking, okay, well, logic says if we move from 50% to 100%, then we should, in theory, be somewhere close to double this, the number of cases and quarantines. And it's going to be a lot higher than that. It might be a factor of 4 or 5, which leads me to one of my biggest concerns, and that's when the kids are quarantined at home, how do they get a level of education that's comparable to what they're getting today, which we know is already not as good as 100% in person. So for me, I like the transition period a lot because I think it serves many people's wants and needs. Those who want to go to school can go to school 4 days a week. Those who have concerns with attending right now don't have to go to school 4 days a week. Those who decide to go to midwinter breaks somewhere where a lot of people are attending can choose to quarantine and just learn from home for the next 10 days. Teachers, I don't expect, if we just remove the cohorts, I don't expect we're going to have many more than maybe 50% of the students actually show up. So you have a lot of the spacing that you are going to want in class. Because a lot of students are currently not going because they get the same education at home as they do in school. So I just have the concern with 100% in person mandate after the 4 weeks. Everything else, I understand the logic and I support.
I can go next. I was in a similar spot as you, Dan, when I saw the idea of kind of opening up from 50% and letting kids have a little more freedom of going to additional days. And then I went to some of our schools because, as you all know, we were getting emails asking, have you been in a school lately? And I thought, well, no. So I contacted Mr. Archibald, and his team arranged for me to go see classrooms in Hardy, which was a true delight, and Millennium and South Lyon High School today, which were also wonderful. It was very surprising to see the a lot of space in a high school of all places. We walked past a lot of rooms today that had like 1 or 3 kids in it, but we also walked past some rooms that had like 10, 12, 13 kids in it. At the middle school, we got there just after dismissal. But the middle school has a higher rate of students attending on those 50% days. When I asked the principal, she, and this was supported by others in leadership of the district, said that the attendance rate is more around like maybe 80 to 90% on those days. So 80 to 90% of the 50%, if that makes sense. So you're getting basically most of the kids showing up on their cohort days, which means that if we allow some flexibility at middle school, it is reasonable to assume that middle school would essentially move to like 90% attendance during the transition period, or like close to 100%. It's understandable because, middle schoolers are like 12 or 13. But it was also very concerning to me to see actual classrooms and to see what this 3 feet of distance means. 3 feet of distance, the words that are being used are really careful. Like, we have to pay attention to it. It is not really 3 feet between students. It's 3 feet from like your belly button to somebody else's belly button. It's from the center of a desk to the center of the next desk, either right next to it or to the desk in front or behind it. So, and people have, measurements, right? We all have diameters. And so it's not that you're keeping somebody at an arm's reach, it's less than 3 feet, and it's less than 3 feet in a lot of classrooms, like a lot of classrooms. Not all, but I just found it really concerning. I think a teacher who would be trying to maintain 6 feet from their students when they're up, at the board, helping the kids work through like a math problem. I don't know. It would make me really uncomfortable. And while I'm very grateful for the opportunity to tour the schools, I'm really glad that when we went to the middle school, it had already let out. It's a lot of people in one room.
I'll jump in next unless somebody else wants to. Okay.
You're good, Eric.
Bear with me. I do realize in 4 weeks we get to revisit this again, which I think is a good thing. My concerns and comments are the same as they've ever been. They're the same as any comment or concern we've heard this evening. Having said that, COVID has run through my house. All 3 of my family members have tested positive. We've all isolated and quarantined. And obviously, yeah, we're done with it. My quarantine in 14 days has just ended. My daughter's was up last week. And my wife, who also teaches in the district, teaching from home, hers is up through, I believe, through this week. So we have all had a lot of home time. And, excuse me, therefore, those concerns that I have, if you had asked me to discuss this a week and a half ago, my comments and concerns would be probably much different than they are today. My concerns are still class sizes, the spacing, the availability of the vaccine, and our availability to keep our buildings staffed and continually. That hasn't changed for me. If we were to be back at 100% starting next week, I don't think we would actually realize a complete 50%, a 50% attendance rate across the board. In some classes, some buildings, yes, we are closer. We are closer to being full. In many places, we're not. Given where we are, I see the plan as proposed to open up those 2 more days a week at the secondary level as a step in the right direction for the next month, given the data we have, the mitigation procedures we have in place, the hard work that we've all done at this current time based on where we are at this point. Yes, I'm hesitant being in quarantine and feeling like crap for the past 2 weeks. But I think with continued support and extreme diligence from our staff, our community, our students, our administrators, I do think it's the step in the proper direction. If we continue to maintain the direction that we're going and be as diligent as we can. So before I cough up a lung, I'll be done.
I guess I'll go since no one else is jumping at the chance. I have a higher percentage of voting for this next month's plan than not. And the reason is I do believe that having the kids in school is a benefit. To be honest with you, I asked my kids, I have a freshman and a senior. My freshman is just itching to get back into school, which I love because the last probably 3 to 4 weeks, every other day, he states to me that school is a waste of time. So being home with him remote is somewhat damaging to what he's going through. All of his friends are at the beginning of the alphabet. We're at the end. He's always kind of struggled through school to begin with, so school's never been a favorite thing for him. But the teachers that he's had has pulled him out, and he needs that interaction. So asking him what his preference is he jumped at the chance to be able to have the option to go the Monday, Tuesday, and then the Thursday, Friday. My daughter, who's a senior, who loves school, is very self-directed, has a couple of AP classes, already, accepted to college, all of those things. She's kind of like, because all of her friends are like, I can just roll out of bed and sit at my chair and get the same thing. But a lot of her friends are also those very self-directed AP classes. A couple of them have been accepted to U of M, which is a hard thing to do. So I think you have to look at the kids and what they're looking for. That's not to say that I think my daughter would prefer to be in school. I think what would also help if there was more after school activities, because that's what she loved to do. She loved to do theater. She was on the golf team. She loved going to the football games and stuff like that. So not having a lot of those at full force, I think you're looking at a lot of the, the upperclassmen who, might have their own cars. The parents kind of leave it up to them, because you're talking about 17, 18-year-olds, as opposed to the middle schoolers where, there's much more ability to tell them they're going to school and they do it, as opposed to the high school level where they're like, whatever, mom, go to work. So I have a little bit of a different scenario with both of that. I understand, the concern with COVID. I understand people's uncomfortableness with it. It's just like in the community. I think in the school itself, there's a 50-50 on, the 100%. So I do like this kind of hybrid plan, going back to school and allowing a choice to be able to have more in-class time. That being said, too, I would like to see, kind of how it's, how it's working, how's the remote learning going to work, get more kids in there to see, based on knowing other districts have more kids and that they are doing it successfully. And, we do have sort of a trickle of kids. Most of the time, my kids that do go in classes on Thursday, Friday, there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids at the most. Encourage your kids to go into school, kind of see how it's working out. Like I said, most of what my, the kid conversation that I'm overhearing is that it's, the reason they're not going is it's just so easy to roll out of bed and land in a chair. Not necessarily the full fear of COVID and things. It's just the ease of what their daily routine is.
Any other comments or discussion?
Yeah, I can jump in. Can you hear me? I'm unmuted, right?
Yes, Mr. Abate.
Good. Thank you. So I agree with a lot of what has been said. I think, I've been trying to think back on the year and the various things that I said, in this forum and the posture that we took, toward different issues related to the pandemic as it went through the year. And, I remember there were a lot of folks, in our public comment, a lot of folks on staff and all over who, expressed in one way or another the concern that things would stretch out and we wouldn't have like a definite point for at least making the attempt to bring some folks back. And I remember hearing that and feeling skeptical, thinking, no, we're making a commitment that as conditions improve, that we'll try to adjust with it, and we'll try to to do more for kids for that. And we've we've gone on a long time with the 50-50 and it's worked in all kinds of ways. And it's due to the tremendous work of the staff. If you I'm just trying to look at Oakland County and the daily cases and so forth. And that's been on a steady decline. I'm not downplaying things because this is still significant and still happening, but the numbers are where they were in October. And I do think there needs to be a point where we start taking a step down that road to bring our kids back and trying to make this happen. I think on a long enough timeline, the folks that are saying, while it's misleading somewhat to talk about the different districts because it's not apples to apples for a whole lot of reasons, I do think on a long enough timeline, the folks that are saying, why can other people make this happen? We're not. That does get kind of hard to answer when we don't make an effort. And so I think that the proposal that's out there, particularly this transition plan, I think it threads the needle in the sense that it's, I don't think we're going to get full capacity of the kids that come back. We've left the option open when we eliminate those cohorts. We've left the option open for kids to stay home if you're still uncomfortable coming in, and that's perfectly acceptable. I would say, while I understand the idea behind sort of setting that hard date at March 1st to kind of get people prepared for that possibility or for that need to bring everybody back. I wouldn't be, as painful as it is to continue to revisit things, I wouldn't be opposed to, taking a look at things as we approach March 1st and seeing how things went. I wouldn't be surprised if we got to that point and we said, well, this has worked out pretty well and it's continuing to work, and maybe we don't want to, fix what isn't broken at that point. Or maybe we reach, we get close to March 1st and we find that it has not gone the way we hoped. And so I would think maybe having some discussion at that point about our future prospects might be good, but I'm either way, I'm content with the plan, the transition plan in particular, eliminating the cohorts, giving some folks some choice, which a lot of people have been asking for a long time, and which we said we would ultimately do. So I'm good with that.
Any other comments?
Can I ask a question? I don't know how this will work with the voting, but as it seems that I'm getting the gist that a lot of people are liking this February of transition, the removal of the cohort, but a little concerned about going back the 100% quote unquote mandated for March 1, and our next meeting is March 2. Could we postpone that 100% to March 8th to allow us to have that March 2nd meeting date to see and to hear how the month of February went with the drop of the cohort? Would that be a reasonable a reasonable request? Do we have to redo a motion? Do we have to redo the whole plan? Do we have to go back to Oakland County for approval? I don't know how easy it is to go from that March 1 to March 8 date, just to allow for a month of discussion.
I guess I would answer that question by asking Superintendent Archibald if that's an option that he would consider, if that presents any problems.
It does not.
And then from a functional...
Sorry for the brief answer. It does not present any problems. Procedurally, we just need to adjust the motions to reflect March 8 as opposed to March 1. And the transition period would extend through that time.
And that was going to be my follow-up, is that we would have to either, basically the motion that we have on the table that was done by you and seconded by Mr. Schwegler would have to be amended to I'll basically include the March 8th date in lieu of the March 1st date.
I have no problem doing that. Do you want me to do that now, or should we wait until all discussion is complete?
I would almost say let's finish with discussion, carry that out just to make sure that if there's going to be a change, it's only one change. Is there anybody else that has a comment or a question?
I do have additional comments, but I don't want to keep somebody else from speaking who hasn't had a chance.
Go ahead, Ms. McDowell.
Okay. I'm not really sure where to start. I'm sorry. I have a lot of notes. One of the chief complaints that I think we've seen and heard at our meetings and in emails to the whole board is that the idea that the online delivery of instruction is inadequate, which I take offense to. That it's not equivalent, certainly to full normal instruction, but to say that it's insufficient is, in my opinion, my professional opinion, is wrong and disrespectful to our teachers. But the chief complaint seems to be about the instruction and methods and support that teachers are given, and that they can then in turn give to their students. So it seems to me like this is a curriculum and instruction problem. And so I would like to know more about what CETA has done specifically to support teachers in adapting their methods as opposed to just providing resources for teachers to use. And just more generally, why are we addressing a CETA problem with the logistical answer?
So we did provide training for staff on all of the curriculum days so far this year around the different resources that were provided. So those resources were identified by our instructional teams, which include teachers, to say what they thought would be most beneficial for their content area for the year or for their grade levels for the year in order to make that transition. And these were things that people, in some cases, piloted last spring as well. So once we identified those resources, we did provide training for staff, ongoing training, it's continuing, for them to understand how to best use those products in their classroom instruction. We've also provided guidelines for them on how to work through the scope and sequence, understanding that in this year we may not get through all of the same things we get through. So how do we prioritize what is most important to teach? And then how do we really build those connections with students and support their social emotional growth in a year that can be challenging for students in particular? So I would counter that with, I think there has been a lot of support and time and effort put into providing teachers with the resources that they need in order to be successful.
Okay. I have an issue with the way that this plan has been presented to the board, and I think that Ms. Ertel's suggestion, helps. Another common theme that we've heard is that communication to families this year has been a big area for growth for our district, and not just to families, but to teachers. It seemed that many of our staff were caught off guard by having tons of desks brought into their classroom. I would be unsettled by that as well. To have this brought up as a transition plan, and a transition should have some kind of evaluation before actually moving on to whatever the next planned step is. So I'm very concerned that this transition plan doesn't have any metrics tied to it. It doesn't have any real guidance to the board other than for the board to consider, other than logistics and comments from the public, both of which are very important. Extending the period, like Ms. Ertel suggested, I think will help because it gives us 2 consecutive weeks of instructional time to look and see what the impact of lifting the attendance from 50 to 100% has. But we really need to have some kind of data to inform our decision. Novi's school board had data in their most recent agenda pack, in their board packet. They went through and provided a snapshot of different metrics that the district has seen. It was every 4 weeks. It's the Oakland County data you give us, and they pointed out where at different points in, relation to this data, the district made decisions. That is something that I think we need and deserve, and that we owe to our community, so that we can explain how we're making a really informed decision. Pointing it back to, this is what the data looked like. This is what, spread looked like in the Oakland County, in the South Lyon part of Oakland County. And say, this is what we looked like every 4 weeks, or whenever, however often they give us the data, and our honor around this day, the board made this decision. Then we have something that we can refer to, and it's publicly available and consolidated in one spot, so that our community can also get a sense of how things are actually looking. I am not a public health expert. None of us are public health experts. And to have these numbers like quoted back to us that, South Lyon District has the highest rate of whatever in the county is just, it's a lot. And we really need the administration to give us some data that we can look at and compare it to other times that we've had to make similar decisions. And without any kind of metric, I don't think we're really doing our job. And I don't think we're being responsible to our students and constituents. So without a set period for the board to reevaluate, with at least 2 consecutive weeks of school worth of data to see, without metrics, this isn't something I can support. Also, having been in that classroom, it's wild. I wouldn't want to teach in there. So that was a lot, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Leftwich. You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Dashner. I appreciate it. This is an incredibly emotional decision. It's a very difficult decision. I was going to save my comments for the board comments at the end, but I feel like now might be the time. I would like to thank Mr. Archibald and the cabinet team for all of the work that has gone into this, all the building administrators. I know how much planning goes into transitioning to face-to-face, whether your district did it in August or October or now. The amount of work is just, it's a lot. So, and I know what you guys have been going through, and thank you for bringing us a comprehensive plan. I intend to support it. I would rather support the March 8 date than the March 1 date, just because it gives an additional week for adjustment. And I just want to say that to the community, to the teachers, to my fellow board members, to the building administrators, I would not be able to support a plan like this, to support 100% face-to-face, if I didn't live it every day. I teach in a district where I am 100% with my classes 5 days a week, 30 plus, and it can be done safely. It's important that the building administrators do everything they can to support those teachers in the plan, whatever they need. Support the mask wearing. It's important to, if they need plexiglass, whatever it is that's going to make that teacher safer in that room is going to make them better in the classroom. There is nothing that can replace face-to-face teaching. From March of last year to what was lost, to the several classes that I taught in my building at a virtual level, while I did my best and the kids did their best, that face-to-face experience of learning and the socialization that goes with it is irreplaceable. And I fully intend to support this plan, and I believe that it can be done safely. If I didn't think it could be done safely, I would not be supporting it. And I think it's time to move forward. I feel like that's what our goal has been, even though I haven't been here until January 1st. But I believe that that's where we all have been heading, and I believe that's where we should head. Thank you.
Mr. Leverage, I just want to thank you for sharing that. we've talked a little bit informally about these things, and I just wanted to say, this is, and for Ms. McDowell as well, the best thing about bringing some new folks into the fold is the different perspectives that we get, and they can kind of challenge our thinking and change our own perspectives. And I have to say, I've heard, I've friends on boards in Livingston County, and I have some folks that teach out there. I've heard anecdotes here and there. I've been skeptical. It's persuasive to me to hear you talk about your personal experience in the room with kids. And again, I know I just said a few minutes ago, it's not apples to apples from one district to another, and it isn't. But to hear you describe your ability to have made this work gives me a little bit of hope that we can pull this off too here. So I'm in agreement with the transition plan, but potentially stretching out that week so that we can have a chance to talk about it.
And I'll add that if this plan does get approved and we move forward, it really takes the community's focus on the screener questions every day. Make sure you're not blowing that off. Make sure that those are being honestly considered every day, because if COVID doesn't come into our school, we do not have the impacts of quarantines. By all means, if your student is getting tested, leave them out of school until the results come back. To get them tested and send them to school creates a lot of issues, creates a lot of quarantine students that then have to sit home for 10 days. So just make sure we're following the best practices, and I think we can make this work just like the other schools are doing. One of the things that I want to ask, and I do this at the risk of making the meeting go longer, but Mr. Archibald, one of the things that have been coming up the last couple of days in comments is funding from the federal government that would help reduce class sizes. When I look at that, I see, okay, to reduce class sizes, we need two things. We need more classrooms and more teachers. Money can hire teachers, but it's not going to do anything for classrooms in any short amount of time. Even if we brought trailers out, we're still looking at 2 to 3 months to get utilities hooked up. Do you see anything that money would help change the situation we're in, Mr. Archibald?
Well, money is always helpful, so I don't
Yes.
want to suggest that it isn't. I think when you look at whether it's staffing or any type of renovation type changes, those could be a little bit slower moving. But again, if we have the dollars, then we need to be creative to be making the best use of them as quickly as we can to again support our teachers, support our staff, and support our students. So give us the dollars and let us get to work with it.
One more question is, we always see this, and this could be somebody from the cabinet as well, but there's always a lot of concern about hallway passing times, having a lot of students in small areas. What are your thoughts about the people that or what are your thoughts about the concerns over passing time?
Well, I think, and the others can jump in as well. I think part of what the transition will do, and I'll be honest, in the times I've been in the buildings, I have not seen a lot of congregating. Again, it's not like a typical school year. And I think as we gradually increase the number of students, it's working with them to establish those routines and patterns. And, I think, again, I have tremendous confidence in our students to, work with us to follow their directions, and it will take some effort to get them moving, but once they know the expectations and that we're going to be consistent in enforcing those expectations, our students rise to the challenge. So again, it'll take a consistent effort by the entire staff, and I'm confident that our students will be responsive. Any colleagues want to add to that?
I was just going to share that it is 15 cumulative minutes over a 24-hour period within 6 feet of the same person, and that person has to be COVID positive. So passing time really very rarely is going to move somebody into that category, Mr. Dashner. So really students are moving very quickly. In most cases, they have their backpacks with them. They're not stopping at lockers and chatting with their friends like they would in a typical school year. So in our experience so far this year, that has not been a factor that's really moving the needle much. We don't anticipate that being a factor as we increase the student population in the buildings. And we've seen in the districts around us that have their passing time with 100% of their students, that has gone well.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question I will ask Mr. Archibald is, just because I want this to be heard in a public meeting, is when we see outbreaks from a state, does that mean that you've got spread happening in school and a bunch of people are getting COVID in school?
No, it means that you've got two cases that are similar in time and place. As the example we had at one of our elementary schools most recently, it does not necessarily mean that those two cases, one was transmitted to the other. Sue Toth, you're on the line and deal with this. Can you correct me if I've misspoken or make me sound better?
You've done a fine job. It's that definition of those two or more contacts that are identified as being connected. So without being in the same household. So you said it very well.
So
it really is unfortunate verbiage on, outbreak makes you think of the movie Outbreak. And it really is a case-to-case transferred, and it's not even doesn't have to be proven that that's where the case-to-case was transferred. It's just similar time and place, and then they're linked. So, just for everybody's information.
Thank you. So if we have no further comments, it sounded like we had potential for an amended motion.
Yep, somehow I always get myself in these positions where I have to restate something and it never turns out well. My brain and my mouth don't always think at the same time. So I will amend the motion to approve the extended COVID learning plan as presented with an alteration or an adjustment to the date of beginning 100% from March 1st to March 8th. That cover everything?
Do we have support? Who was that? Mr. Kennedy? Okay. So we have a motion by Mrs. Ertel to approve the plan, changing the date to March 8th for 100% instruction, supported by Mr. Kennedy. Ms. Ertel, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Leftwich?
Yes.
Ms. McDowell?
Sorry, couldn't find the button. No.
Mr. Abate?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Schwegler?
Yes.
And Mr. Dashner?
I vote yes. Motion passes 6-1. Next on the agenda, we have item 12, which is administration. Mr. Archibald, any legislation?
Nothing to share this evening.
Thank you. Board committee reports, legislative. I don't believe we have anything there. Policy, I don't believe they've met and have a meeting upcoming. Finance, has finance met, Mr. Schwegler?
Yes, we actually met yesterday, I believe it was. Yeah, yesterday's on Monday. So I guess a couple quick notes. We're going to be hopefully getting our first look at the final revised budget sometime in late April, May. Good news is I believe Stacy said that there are additional ESSER funds coming our way from the federal government, and there is the potential for the state to approve additional funds as well to be used along those similar guidelines. Basically, these are funds that we would potentially get to help with COVID-related expenses. So I'll give a little parameters on what we can use them on, and we find creative ways to make sure those funds are used up so that they don't come out of our general fund. I don't think I'm going to talk about the other that was brought up quite yet until we get more information, but that was basically it.
Thank you, Mr. Schwegler. Facilities and planning, Mr. Tell.
Yes, we actually had a meeting this afternoon, and we went over some progress that the architects and construction manager have made with the pool addition at South Lyon High School. They had some options for elevations, options and adjustments to floor plans. They'll be taking the comments back and making some tweaks and adjustments. We also got a rundown on a couple of projects as they've progressed into different levels of schematic and design development, gone to the construction manager for some tighter budgeting and estimating. The good thing is most projects are coming in very close to the original estimate. Obviously, there's some variances one way or the other. The next big one in terms of getting an estimate will be for the pool. And once we get, or the architect gets some elevations and materials nailed down, we'll see where we're at with budget on that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Tell. Thank you. Curriculum and communications, I don't believe they've met so far this year.
Nope, we have not yet. Our next meeting, I believe, is next, let me double check. Next Thursday, I believe it's the 11th.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
I have a question about that. When can we expect an update about the expenses that the board approved in December that came from the Curriculum and Communications Committee? We bought IXL and Nearpod, and I think there was one more thing. And I was wondering when we can expect a public update about how those monies were used in training and how they're being used and rolled out. Not on the committee, so I don't know.
I'm sure we could get that from Ms. Kudwa or the other CETA, the CETA gals. I know they've been purchased and implemented. To exactly what extent and how much they're being used, I couldn't tell you that yet. But I would defer that to Ms. Kudwa. She would have
I'm not asking for like a spot response. I'm just, I'm not on the committee, so I'm looking for, some point at getting an update on how we're using everything.
I suppose, Lisa, we could get one of those on the 11th. Just an update.
So typically that's not the role of curriculum and communications, Mr. Kennedy.
Okay.
Curriculum and communications would look at what is being proposed and provide their support for the motion, but they don't get an ongoing update of what % of staff or students are using items that have been purchased. That's not a historic role we've used.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what Ms. McDowell what exactly you'd be looking for. Sorry.
I mean, I guess we approved like a lot of money to be spent on buying these licenses for teachers. So I would just like some kind of update on how it's going. I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking for, but are people using it? Like, how have they been trained on it? Do kids like it? Like, I don't know, but it seems reasonable to ask for some kind of update about how recently approved district resources are being used. An update at our February meeting or March would be fine.
Mr. Kennedy, you and I can discuss that.
Okay, will do.
Okay, up next we have the Open Schools Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. Mr. Tell, has there been anything there?
There was a meeting last week. It fell on my husband's birthday, so I was unable to attend, but there has been some correspondence and links to some goal setting and discussion points that has been sent out since. So they must have discussed some different tools and points to review, take a look at. I'm not sure if it's something to do by the next meeting or if it was something that people were looking at to kind of gain a better idea or guidance on how to implement or think about diversity and inclusion in the education setting.
Okay, thank you. And then item C is other. Do we have any other? Any from you, Mr. Archibald? No. Okay, item 13, reports, South Lyon Educational Foundation. Mr. Abate?
Yes, I do. I have. They sent me a nice write-up here, so I'll share that with everybody. The South Lyon Education Foundation is excited to share that the application process is now open for this year's Perseverance Awards. A $1,000 scholarship will be given to a senior from each high school who has overcome significant obstacles or demonstrated dramatic academic improvement throughout their high school careers. Applications for the Perseverance Award are available on the SLEF website. The deadline is April 22nd. This year, SLEF is focusing on engagement and connecting more with local businesses and the South Lyon community. SLEF recently joined the Kensington Valley Chamber of Commerce to network and support our local businesses. The South Lyon High School Audit Transition Program is selling SLHS umbrellas for $25. Proceeds from each umbrella sold help support the foundation. To purchase, go to the SLEF website or Facebook page for more information. We'd like to thank everyone that donated as part of our end-of-year fundraising campaign and gave Star Awards for outstanding teachers. Remember, Star Awards can be given any time of the year by going to our website. We also would like to recognize the following individuals and businesses for their gold level donation. Mr. Steve Showerman, Michelle Tomei, M3 Investment Services, Lincoln Investment Planning. Thank you for generous donations. They will be put to good use. And SLEF is looking to add a few more members to the foundation. If you would like to make an impact in our district and have experience in event planning or fundraising, please reach out to us. It's a great group. These are some real go-getters and really trying to take this to the next level. So if you're interested in something like that, help us really grow this. We encourage you to come out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abate. That brings us to item number 14, which is our second round of public comments. And I do believe some additional comments were submitted. Let's see. So we have a comment from from Laura Kelly. So that says, please support our secondary students going back face-to-face. Those calling with objections to the plan have the virtual option to lean on. If parents understand the risk and still want their kids to return, we should have that option as well. These kids are falling behind and need face-to-face schooling. Doreen Bradley writes, I encourage the board to retain the current hybrid model of instruction. Consistency is so important, and changing now will only insert added disruption to schools. It will not be smooth sailing as so many people expect. Listen to the students and teachers who have voiced support for the current model. I have 2 high school students at East, and they are learning. Changing now will only bring more learning disruption and unsafe environments for our community. John Nichols writes, as has been said, 50% is working. The 50% hybrid model is working well, and doubling the capacity to 100% will certainly lead to an increase in COVID cases, accounting for the increased class size and lack of social distancing. Not only that, but quarantined students, as it has been said, will not have the option of live instruction, further exacerbating the situation. I would urge the board to consider this in their decision and keep the current plan of 50%. Joanne Beardsley writes, I understand the board's decision today will be an important decision. Although I considered the virtual learning program for my sons, I ended up opting for the hybrid program as my older son expressed his disappointment in not being able to keep some of his classes in the VLP schedule. I would not support the proposal to return to 100% instruction, not only because it is unsafe, which is the main reason, but also because the VLP doesn't seem to be an equal alternative to the in-person model. Michelle Macara was going to call in. I don't know if she still intends to. I will move to the next comment. If Ms. McCara does call in, please jump in after I finish the next comment. Cheryl Benson writes, I would like the board to consider that regardless of any decision made here tonight, to extend the transition period to the end of the school year. Although I am comfortable with sending my kids back knowing they need extra support, I sympathize with the parents who do not feel comfortable with sending their kids back full-time and therefore should be given the option. Did Michelle McCara join? Okay, next we have Jared Adams. If the board can't adequately social distance us 6 feet in the plan, then why is it being proposed to bring us back at 100%? I have multiple classes with 30 plus students, and having 30 plus students was already considered a big class size before COVID. So imagine now how that will be handled, considering 6 feet of social distancing is the proper amount needed. I think it is crucial to realize we're in a pandemic and nothing we've done will be 100% perfect, so safety should be the concern. We have Alice Kondrakic. Sorry about that last name if I pronounced it wrong. The return to school plan, we need a balanced solution to ensure access to education for students who elect the hybrid in-person option. A return to full capacity while also choosing to eliminate technology options for remote attendance will create more problems than it solves. Students who may be exposed to COVID in school and forced quarantine should continue to have access to Google Meet Classroom for remote learning. Eliminating this access is unfair and risks their education. Thank you.
Hi, this is Michelle.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you to everyone here tonight. Thank you for what you do for our schools. I support the continuing current, I support continuing the current hybrid model. I am a parent in the community. I have 3 secondary school kids. Perhaps my feeling is that perhaps when the entire South Lyon community decides to follow all of the CDC guidelines and not just those that suit them, maybe then South Lyon could return to a full schedule. However, when families and students continue to not follow basic CDC guidelines, like wearing a mask at all times, this does continue to put our community at risk as well as drive up the COVID numbers. You can walk into any local store, local sports facility, local gas station here in South Lyon, and you will see unmasked community members. Here's what baffles me. There are extremely vocal parents that have no problem publicly chastising our school board and superintendent over the return to school topic. Yet some of these parents have been the very parents that have contributed to the increase of COVID cases in our community. Just think back to when our community was all over the news for the giant parties last fall. To those pushing so hard for 100% face-to-face return, I have to ask, does it even matter that people are dying from this wicked, wicked virus? Symptomatic or asymptomatic, it does not matter. The virus can be passed along to those that may not be able to fight it off. How can anyone be certain who is passing this virus along? You can't. You may think that because your child has had it and has recovered, that all children and all of their family members will recover too. This is not always the case. To boot, my understanding is that there are many kids still being sent to school sick. If the district returns to a majority of in-person learning, I would say be prepared for more time off, additional inconsistency in learning, and finally, be prepared to hear from the same parents that push for the 100% return, because they won't be happy when things have to shut down again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCara. Next comment, we have Mark Skrelja. Sorry, I butchered his name again. I am disappointed in the board's vote not to allow the Great Lakes Bombers 3A status as we met all requirements. I don't understand why this is being looked at as a competition between us and the junior league. This is just about South Lyon kids playing on South Lyon fields. This is our first year in existence, and this is why we haven't used the fields in the past. We will apply to use the fields as the 3B group. As Mrs. Witt said, the 3A group will be booked, all the fields, and some will sit not used. Next, we have Julianne Sleek. She states, since you voted to send our children back to 100% capacity for in-person learning, now you need to experience some increased risk as well. You need to stop meeting virtually and start meeting in person immediately. And our final comment is from Miss Becky Rapp, and she states she was going to call in. Mrs. Rapp? Okay, since Mrs. Rapp doesn't appear to be on, we will move to item 15, correspondence. Mr. Archibald, is there any correspondence? I'm not aware of any.
I have none, Mr. Dashner.
Okay, item 16 is our meeting dates. They're all listed there. And item number 17, board comments. Mr. Ortell, would you like to go first?
Sure. First and foremost, I'd like to say welcome to the new math teacher up at the high school. She joins
Hello?
the meeting at a very, yeah, hello?
Is that you, Miss Rapp?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Is it okay if I comment now? I was hitting *6, but it wasn't allowing me to come through.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I want to thank you to the board for supporting the secondary students. I know that there's been a lot of back and forth tonight, but I genuinely want to thank you guys for your support. Having 2 secondary students myself, I can see the necessity for this. I've also been teaching in person since September, and we don't have 6 feet or 3 feet social distancing, but we do wear masks and have been taking precautions, and it has been fine. On a different topic, in looking towards the future, I'm asking the board to hold the South Lyon Community Schools accountable to the 1,080 instructional hours that are required by the state of Michigan. I understand there's ways to get around these hours this school year due to COVID, and that South Lyon is taking advantage of this. However, next year, this will not be the case. When a calendar comes up for approval for next school year, I'm asking the board to really look at it, examine, and consider, and make sure that our students are getting those full hours. The instruction lost on the 12 half days that have been in our calendar for the last several years is ridiculous. Districts in the area do not have these half days in this, lost instruction. They're unnecessary, and any teacher knows that half days are a waste of instructional time. If you're looking at what is best for kids, then you'll examine this carefully when the time comes in the spring. The 3 added extra Wednesdays off this year that they've just added in serve no purpose and is yet another waste of instructional time. I teach in Brighton, and when I compare our instructional hours to South Lyon Community Schools instructional hours, they just don't add up. I'm asking for transparency. Put it on the website so we can see these instructional hours. I want to see what they were for this school year. I'm asking for that transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rapp. Mrs. Ortell, we'll go back to you and allow you to start over.
Yep. So again, welcome to the new math teacher up at the high school. And the only other item that I would like to make a comment on is, I know that there's probably a lot of families and kids disappointed that we did not support the South Lyon Bomber organization. They do have the ability to use our fields. I would like to ask, after listening to what Ms. Witt had mentioned, that due to this, knowing that there is another team in town, if the South Lyon Junior League, when they're scheduling fields, make sure they're going to be using those fields to allow some open time and open space for other teams to have a chance at using those fields. And I will put out there a shameless plug for Lyon Township. Any teams that would like additional fields, I know there's 2 fields on the east side of Atchison Park that are not being utilized. They are in rough shape. But any team that's willing to potentially work with the township, there is a Parks and Rec committee. Reach out to them, see if there's some partnerships that can happen with them to see if there's some fields that could be utilized. Other than that, I think we have midwinter break coming up. Everybody enjoy your time off and stay warm. It's supposed to get cold next week. Thank you.
Mrs. McDowell?
Thanks. I also want to say welcome and congratulations to Miss Buddha. It's always nice seeing another math teacher in South Lyon. I want to say thank you to all the students, regardless of which side of the issue they stood on tonight. As a former social studies teacher, in addition to math, it's very encouraging and heartwarming and lovely to see young folks engage in civic discourse and advocate for themselves. And I would encourage any student who has a concern about anything related to their education to do that now or in the future. It's an excellent opportunity. I want to say thank you to Mr. Archibald and his team for organizing tours for me to go see Hardy, South Lyon High School, and Millennium, and thank you to the administration at each of those three schools. And also obviously to the staff, who I don't think was expecting to see this like posse of adults walking around and poking their head in the classroom. So thank you to the teachers and students for the warm welcome. I would add to that I would strongly encourage my colleagues on the board to go look in a classroom. Mr. Archibald's team is more than willing to, at least in my experience, to accommodate that request. I am sure that you did something similar when each of you joined the board, and I would be very surprised if this is the same kind of experience that you had when you saw a classroom pre-COVID. It was very eye-opening and educational. So thank you.
Mr. Leftwich.
Thank you, Mr. Dashner. We board members, all of us, received dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of emails here in the last 2 weeks, especially. And I would like to let the community know and the teachers know and anyone who sent those that I read every word of every one. I take this very seriously, and I take your emails seriously, and I did give fidelity to anybody who took the time to write. And Mr. Dashner, thank you for, as the president, responding on behalf of the board to so many of them. I know that must have been time consuming. And many of them were teachers, and I really just want to encourage the teachers who are still on the line to work with their administrators and to talk to your administrators as you move toward the transition toward 100%, and to tell them what it is you need. They can't solve problems if they don't know. So be forthright, be respectfully vocal, and bring problems and bring ideas to your administrators and work with them to find solutions. And to the administrators, bring what you need to central office, and central office bring what you need to this board. I told Steve the other night, Mr. Archibald, excuse me, I told Mr. Archibald the other night that, we want to know how we can help, how we can support. I know it's not going to be 100% smooth. There are going to be problems, and there are going to be hurdles, and we can get over them if we talk about them and if we bring those problems to the people who have the ability to help solve them. So let's work together, and this can be done. I would not have voted yes to go back 100% if I didn't truly believe it was the best mode of instruction and that it could be done safely. With that, I'll conclude.
Mr. Kennedy.
You've all done so well. I really don't have anything in addition to add this evening that hasn't already been said. Welcome to our new math teacher. I hope everybody does everything they can to stay well, despite our best efforts in my family. That didn't happen, and believe we did everything we could. But we're all on the mend, so keep the faith. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Schwegler.
Yes, I'll start off by welcoming Ms. Buddha to the district. Welcome. To everyone who has sent an email, teachers, students, community members, I know not every email we have received is of the same opinion. And within that, there are varying degrees of how people feel. And I want to just encourage you to continue to send them. As Mr. Leftwich said, I know all of us read every single word every single time. And while Mr. Dashner has done an absolutely amazing job at taking care to respond to each email with a lot of thought, we take these words into our consideration. We use this along with the data that we do have available to us. We really do try to make a decision that is best for as many people as possible. And I really do believe that the decision we came to today reflects that. To the Bombers, it's great to see as our community grows that there are other opportunities. I'm hopeful that after tonight's discussion, they do recognize that there is a pathway to have access, and hopefully, I have confidence that Chris will do a good job helping fit everybody in as best we can. That's all I really have tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Abate.
Okay, thank you very much. First I want to tip my hat to our new folks. First, Ms. McDowell, it takes a lot of courage to speak your mind and be in in a moment when you are kind of holding down for a particular vote, so quote unquote the minority position for that particular vote. But we need that. We need that. We need people to push all of our thinking, and I really do appreciate the perspective that you brought tonight. And Mr. Lefwich, you are a very confident new voice, and I just appreciate what you bring to the table as well, being an educator and living that world in person in another district. It was helpful for us, I think, to hear that. I want to talk a little bit just to our to and about our students for a second. We got a lot of communication from kids in our public comments, in our email, and as Mrs. McDowell pointed out, that's always excellent. It's always wonderful to see. Those are always the best messages. They are models of respect and civility in most cases. And, we talk a lot about the things that kids learn in schools, and teachers talk about the learning and that they help kids reach, but perhaps less talked about is how much we learn from our students. And, we really need to get a lesson from them in the way that they express themselves, and especially in these really charged moments. And I think we need to give kids a little bit more credit than we have been. I've spent this entire year in a middle school with kids who are masked up and coming in every day and going to class. And granted, it's another district, but I can count on one hand how many times I had to remind a kid to keep his mask on properly. Again, another district, but kids are kids, and I do believe by and large our kids are respectful when they come in and they listen to and follow the rules. Do we need to remind some people to follow those mitigation procedures? Sure, and we'll continue to. And students, you have to understand, we've just opened up a tremendous opportunity. I know a lot of you have been looking forward to getting back to 4 days, and we hope you'll take advantage of that. But understand that you have an enormous responsibility on your hands now to keep your classmates safe, to keep your teachers safe, and your family safe, which means following the rules when you come in. It's just simple as that. You're going to wear your mask. You're going to do that. It's not an option. You're not going to make our teachers continue to remind you. Okay, so that theme kind of kept popping up, and I just want to make sure that was said. But I trust you, and I believe our kids are going to do a phenomenal job because they want to be in class. And when you want to be there and you know what it takes to be there, they'll step up and do that. So with that said, I just want to thank our administration, Mr. Archibald, our whole cabinet team. You put a lot of time into that. And again, every time we have to come out at one of these meetings, you have to be the ones to step out on that limb. You're hoping we're going to support you. You're hoping the community is going to support you. And you know that whichever way you go, half the community is not going to be totally satisfied with that. But you keep doing your job with a lot of class and dignity and skill. And we appreciate that. So have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. I will also echo the warm welcome to Ms. Buda. I really miss our in-person meetings where we got to meet the teachers in person before the meeting. Hopefully one day we can get back to it. To the public comment regarding in-person board meetings, we are currently prohibited by Michigan Department of Health and Human Services rules from holding them. Basically, the rules they put in place, there's some exceptions, and they did not list school board public meetings as one of the exceptions. So the next question from that is usually, well, how can school be open and the board meetings closed? I can't tell you that. It's just the way the rules are. We're playing by them. Just like opening our schools is playing by the rules they've given us. So I do echo what was said about the students. I like hearing from the students. I like hearing their perspective instead of parents telling us what they think their kids are feeling. I like hearing it directly from them. I would encourage them at any time, write the entire board, call into the meetings. You're certainly welcome, and we do value your opinion. With that, that is all I have, and I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll support.
That was moved by Mr. Leftwich, supported by Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Tell, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Kennedy.
I vote yes.
Mr. Leftwich.
Yes.
Mr. Abate.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Dashner.
I vote yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
And Ms. McDowell.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. The board is adjourned at 10 p.m., 3 hours on the dot. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Stay well.
Night.